Chapter 407. Swish. The war blade that was wrapped in golden light was filled with a terrifying aura of sharpness. It was as if a peerless divine blade was slashing towards Gray. However, Gray's gaze was sharp as he stared straight at this peerless divine blade. Whoosh! A black fog filled with a destructive aura appeared, but it did not appear on the magic sword in Gray's hand. Instead, it appeared on his left fist and wrapped around it, causing his fist to expand by more than 10 times in an instant. It was as if he was wearing an oversized black glove. Almost no one would attach an ability to their own flesh and blood. The power of an ability was absolute, and it would not be able to avoid being injured just because the user of the ability was using it. The ability of the Blood Beast was a double-edged sword. It could injure others, but it could also injure oneself. It was just that blood warriors usually held the hilt of their swords and slashed at their enemies instead of themselves. Therefore, it was rare for them to be injured by their own ability. However, for Gray to attach an ability to his own flesh and blood was not much different from using a sword to slash himself. Chi. Just as Gray's hand was wrapped in the black fog, it immediately emitted a sound as if it had been corroded by strong acid. If it was someone else, even a barbarian blood warrior, their entire hand would have been crippled. However, Gray had a terrifying defense that even a desolate grade would find it hard to damage. After the black fog wrapped around his hand, although it was corroding his hand, it was not as serious as other people's. Although there were traces of corrosion, it was only to a slight extent. It was far from enough to destroy his entire arm in a short period of time. Clenching his teeth slightly, Gray endured the pain of the corrosion on his arm. The killing intent in his eyes soared as he fiercely smashed his fist towards Tessie Jeffries' blade. Tessie, retreat quickly. Seeing that Gray had actually covered his hand with the ability of the Blood Beast and wanted to use this hand to block Tessie Jeffries' attack, the bald old man's expression changed. At the same time, he loudly reminded Tessie Jeffrey as he quickly rushed over. Not good. Tessie Jeffrey's expression also changed greatly, but it was too late. Bang! The saber surrounded by golden light collided with Gray's left fist, which was wrapped in black mist. Their abilities neutralized each other. Gray blocked the power of the saber and was not sent flying. Whoosh! In his right hand, the magic sword slashed out at lightning speed. Puff! With the crisp sound of flesh being cut open, the magic sword in Gray's hand slashed across Tessie Jeffries' body. Terry Jeffries' retreating body suddenly froze. A clear wound appeared on his neck. Then, a large amount of dark red blood spurted out, splattering on himself and Gray. However, it was quickly washed away by the rain. His eyes were wide open, and they were filled with shock, fear, and unwillingness. He opened his mouth to say something, but his throat was cut open, and he couldn't make a sound. The long saber touched the ground, and he struggled to steady himself. Wave after wave of tiredness hit him, and he knew that he was about to fall into eternal darkness. He was unwilling, he was furious, and his heart was filled with intense resentment. He had come to avenge His Highness Cadice, but he had already been injured in the first exchange. The two of them had joined hands and finally blocked the opponent, adding many wounds to his body. He had originally thought that he could slowly grind the opponent to death, but he hadn't expected the situation to reverse in an instant. Even he, bang! The bald old man rushed over and sent Gray flying with an axe. He looked anxiously at Tessie Jeffrey, and his face immediately turned deathly pale. He hurriedly supported Tessie Jeffrey, and took out a bottle of high-grade healing medicine for him to drink. However, his heart suddenly sank. He could clearly feel that the opponent's body was slowly turning cold, and blood was constantly flowing out from his neck. Finally, he clearly felt Tessie Jeffrey's body go limp, and there was no trace of life left. His wide-open eyes were dim and lifeless. What? Sir Tessie is also dead? Devil, that person is a devil. His Highness Codice died at his hands, and now even Sir Tessie has died at his hands. How can this be? Didn't Sir Tessie and Sir Grover join hands? How can the two of them still lose to the opponent? The people of the Flame Kingdom were both angry and afraid. They were angry because Grey had killed two important people of the Flame Kingdom in a row, and they were afraid of the strength that Grey had displayed. Especially in the last battle, when Grey was facing the joint attack of two desolate-level combatants. Even so, he still managed to kill one of them. This made them feel a deep sense of fear. The two of them weren't a match for him, so how many desolate-level combatants would it take to kill him? Tessie Jeffrey also died at the hands of Grey. Grey killed another person. The people of the Purple Moon Kingdom couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Whether it was Curtis Blaze or Tessie Jeffrey, they were both extremely powerful people. The former was in the realm of a desolate blood warrior, and although the latter had not reached the realm of a desolate blood warrior, he was comparable to a desolate blood warrior with his pinnacle bronze magic weapon. Moreover, the latter had joined hands with a desolate blood warrior, but even so, one of them was still killed by Grey. This made them feel uncontrollably shocked. This guy is really like a monster. His growth rate is too fast. Gavin Kenneth, who was engaged in a fierce battle with his opponent, looked back in Grey's direction and shook his head helplessly. If he was still confident that he could contend against Grey before, now he was probably no match for him. I can't fall too far behind. After stabbing her spear into the enemy's throat, she pulled it out and let the enemy's corpse fall powerlessly. Sophia looked at Grey in the distance and smiled slightly. Although the limelight has been stolen, I'm in a good mood. Francis Violet said in a good mood as he forced Niklos Blaze to retreat with his spear in cooperation with the Blood Fiends. Niklos Blaze didn't say a word, but his expression was even gloomier. He stabbed out with his spear and golden flames were endless, as if they were the endless fury in his heart. You deserve to die. After putting down Tessie Jeffrey's corpse, the bald old man looked at Grey with eyes full of hostility. Because of his anger, his face was ferocious. Together with his bald head, he looked like a devil. First it was His Highness Codice, then it was the talented disciple Tessie Jeffrey. The other party had consecutively killed two of the Flame Kingdom's seeds of hope, causing such a huge loss to the Flame Kingdom. He couldn't be forgiven. But you can't kill me. Facing the other party's hostile gaze, Grey was calm and composed. He held the magic sword in his hand, and black mist surrounded the sword as he walked step by step toward the bald old man. Today, even if I have to risk my life, I'll kill you. Lightning surged on the battle-axe as the bald old man roared furiously and pounced toward Grey. Crackle! Blue-white lightning surged, turning the silver battle-axe blue and white. Its size expanded several times, and with a terrifying aura that could split a mountain in half, the axe brazenly chopped toward Grey. Facing this fierce battle-axe, Grey was not afraid at all. He even ignored the battle-axe that was coming toward him. Black mist wrapped around his sword, and he slashed at the bald old man. Clang! At the critical moment, the bald old man's battle-axe shifted and blocked the sword. Both of them couldn't help but retreat slightly. Grey dared to exchange injury for injury, but he didn't. He didn't have Grey's powerful defense. Clang! 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 In the next moment, the two of them once again pounced at each other with murderous intent, and they clashed again and again. The terrifying shockwaves were like claps of thunder. Every time they collided, the lightning around the battle-axe and the black mist around the sword would inevitably sputter in all directions. Pooh! 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 Some of the people from the two countries who were closer to the two countries immediately suffered. Either they were struck by the scattered lightning and turned into charcoal, or they were contaminated by the black mist, and a large hole appeared in their bodies, causing them to bleed to death. The two of them were like death gods on the battlefield. Wherever they passed, they didn't even need to do anything. People were bound to die because of them. Pooh! After a series of exchanges, Gray once again found an opportunity to exchange injury for injury. His sword slashed across the bald old man's abdomen, leaving a deep wound. However, the bald old man seemed to have made up his mind to fight Gray to the death. His face was ferocious, and even though his abdomen had been slashed open, he still pounced on Gray and fiercely attacked Gray. "You must die today," he roared. Holding the battle-axe in his hand, the blue and white lightning on it bloomed terrifyingly. It was as if a thunder god had descended to the world. With a swing of the axe, Gray was forced to retreat. "I'm afraid you can't do it," Gray coldly snorted. Although he was forced to retreat, his sword had still slashed across the old man's body, leaving a trace of blood. Whoosh! A long river of black mist gushed out and swept toward the bald old man. The bald old man dodged with a flicker. Behind him, a series of blood-curdling screams sounded. Dozens of soldiers from the Kingdom of Flames and the Kingdom of Purple Moon had been reduced to ashes. Crackle! A blue and white lightning struck Gray. Gotcha! The black mist wrapped around the sword and turned into a several-meter-long slash. The lightning was instantly shattered. Gray flashed and appeared in front of the bald old man, slashing his sword at him. "I can't wait any longer." Sensing that Gray's physical strength had not decreased by much despite his numerous injuries, the bald old man's eyes flashed with a hint of determination. Instead, it was his own physical strength that was beginning to decrease due to excessive blood loss. Whoosh! The demonic sword wrapped in black mist slashed at him with murderous intent. However, he did not block it like before. Instead, he did not defend himself at all, allowing the sword to slash at his body. At this instant, his aged body suddenly erupted with a frightening killing intent akin to a flash flood. It was as if a peerless sharp weapon had been unsheathed, revealing its most primitive edge. In his body, an incomplete lightning-like pattern appeared. It was like an eternal bolt of lightning had been branded into his body, turning into his spine and becoming a part of his body. Whoosh! A large amount of blood power gathered towards this lightning rune. The lightning rune seemed to have come alive, emitting a violent aura. Under this kind of chi activity, his body could not bear the burden, and cracks appeared one after another. It was as if he was a broken vase that was pieced together. On the outside, the blue and white lightning on the battle-axe in his hand was rapidly shrinking. Finally, at the edge of the battle-axe, a ray of light as bright as the blue and white sun was formed. Chapter 408. Poof! The demonic sword, which was wrapped in black fog, sliced through the bald old man's body from his right abdomen to his left chest. The blade of the sword sank deeply into the bald old man's body. The bald old man's chest was immediately cut open, and his internal organs could be faintly seen. Blood spilled out, and some of his internal organs were even seeping out. Not good. The sword had almost split the bald old man in half. The bald old man was definitely dead. Logically, Gray should be happy, but at this moment, fear appeared on his face. He sensed an extremely dangerous aura from the heavily injured bald old man. This aura made his hair stand on end and his scalp go numb. A layer of goosebumps appeared on his body. The sense of danger was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. His heart beat wildly, as if it was going to jump out of his throat. He had experienced such a feeling once before. That was when Kodak Blaze had attacked him with his incomplete blood skill. It was also at that time that he was heavily injured. Even with his terrifyingly strong defense, he was still heavily injured by the other party's attack. If he had not avoided his heart at the crucial moment, he might have died on the spot. Even if he had a terrifying healing ability like the reverse nurturing ability, it would be useless if he died before he could use it. There was no doubt that the other party was using a blood skill and was planning to perish together with him. Retreat. Gray retreated rapidly as if he was avoiding a snake or a scorpion. Even if he had an extremely strong defense, he did not dare to take it head-on. Die. Looking at Gray, whose expression changed drastically and who was retreating rapidly, the bald old man, who was bleeding profusely from his chest, laughed maniacally. The killing intent in his eyes was so cold that it seemed to freeze Gray. He raised the battle axe in his hand and swung it at Gray. Crack! A bolt of blue-white lightning shot out from his axe and went straight for Gray. This bolt of blue-white lightning was only 2 meters long and as thin as a baby's thumb. Compared to the previous bolts of lightning that were more than 20 meters long and as thick as an arm or even a water bucket, it was really ordinary. However, it was this blue and white lightning that made Gray feel extremely horrified. It was as if it was not a bolt of lightning, but a boundless sea of lightning. It was filled with a terrifying aura of destruction. It was as if a lightning punishment had descended from the heavens, wanting to destroy everything in the world and return the world to chaos. Cold sweat dripped down Gray's back like rain. He dodged to the side in panic, but the distance was too close. The bald old man was clearly risking his life in exchange for this opportunity to attack him. It was already too late to activate the spatial teleportation. He might not have even teleported away before the attack landed on him. Gray dodged to the side, but as soon as he took a step, the blue-white lightning struck him. Crackle! The bolt of lightning was only as thick as a baby's thumb, but when it struck Gray's body, it exploded with the terrifying power of 1,000 bolts of lightning. Gray had a body that even desolate blood warriors would find difficult to inflict serious damage on. His skin and flesh immediately split open, and a large amount of his flesh was charred and then turned to ash. Under the attack of the lightning, a large portion of his flesh had actually disappeared. Crack! This was the sound of bones shattering. In Gray's body, several bones could not withstand the impact and broke, and Gray's hair had unknowingly turned to ash. The terrifying lightning wreaked havoc in his body. He could not control his body, and even his mind was numb. His body was like a cannonball, flying backward continuously. Bang! 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 There were constantly people who were hit by him and smashed into meat paste. There were people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and people from the Flame Kingdom. Those who were hit by him were all extremely miserable. There were almost no complete corpses, but he still did not stop retreating. Not good dodge. Seeing the miserable state of the people in front of them, many people tried to dodge in panic. However, there were still many people who could not dodge in time. They were hit by him as he flew backward, and their bodies exploded into meat paste. Bang! Dozens more people were killed. He only stopped when he hit a huge boulder, and the boulder that was as large as a small mountain cracked and collapsed. Gravel flew everywhere, and he slid to the ground powerlessly. Soon, he was covered by the falling gravel. Shocking, extremely shocking. Such a shocking turn of events caused the Flame Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom to be dumbfounded. They were speechless for a long time. A desolate blood warrior had actually chosen to risk his life to kill his opponent. This kind of courage made people's hearts tremble. It was extremely shocking. Desolate blood warriors were the strongest existence below king-level warriors. They were only one step away from standing at the top of the world. In any force, they could enjoy endless glory and wealth. However, they had made such a choice. It was really hard to understand. Perish together? His chest had been cut open, and his internal organs were clearly visible. Some of them had even slipped out. The bald old man's fate was already decided. It was almost impossible for him to survive. Even the best healing medicine would not be able to cure him. What the two kingdoms were most concerned about now was not the result of perishing together, but the death of one person and the serious injury of the other. Whoosh whoosh. Many people rushed towards the place where the gravel was buried. There were people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and also people from the Flame Kingdom. The people of the Purple Moon Kingdom hoped for a miracle, while the people of the Flame Kingdom obviously wanted to completely kill the miracle. Even if the other party was still alive, They wanted to kill him while he was seriously injured. They could not let the life of a desolate blood warrior go to waste. They had to kill him completely. Gray, Count Fergus and the others were filled with worry. Gray had first killed Curtis Blaze, then killed Tessie Jeffrey, who was comparable to a desolate blood warrior in terms of battle prowess. He had displayed a battle prowess that was enough to kill a desolate rank, which made them extremely excited. However, when they saw that Gray had suffered a desperate attack from a desolate blood warrior, and they did not know whether he was dead or alive, their mood instantly fell to the bottom. They subconsciously looked at the few barbarian-level blood beasts controlled by Gray. In the next moment their eyes were filled with surprise. Gray's barbarian-level blood beasts did not fall, which meant that Gray was not dead. At least, he was not dead yet. There were many smart people. When Earl Fergus and the others looked at the barbarian-level blood beasts controlled by Gray, there were also people looking at them. Not good, he's not dead yet. Some people from the Flame Kingdom shouted in anger. Their worries had come true. The other party was not dead yet. Gray Fergus is not dead yet. Quick, go and protect him. Some people from the Purple Moon Kingdom shouted in surprise. Whoosh whoosh. The people from the two kingdoms, who were originally rushing in that direction, could not help but use all their strength to run and fight with each other as they ran. A barbarian blood warrior from the Flame Kingdom was running when he suddenly felt his body sink, as if he had fallen into a quagmire. His speed plummeted, and his movements became sluggish. Behind him, a barbarian blood warrior from the Purple Moon Kingdom quickly overtook him and rushed forward. However, this barbarian blood warrior from the Purple Moon Kingdom had just taken a few steps forward when he suddenly felt a strong wind coming from the side. His expression changed, and he swept out his sword to block this strong wind. However, he could not help but slow down his pace because of this. A barbarian blood warrior from the Flame Kingdom rushed past him and went straight for the pile of rubble where Gray was. However, at this moment, a huge fireball with terrifying heat fell from the sky and attacked directly in front of him. Sensing danger, he dodged with his hind legs and narrowly avoided this fireball. However, he could not help but be temporarily delayed. With the pile of rubble that buried Gray as the center, intense fighting continued, and there was no lack of desolate blood warriors among them. Gray's talent was unquestionable. Now that he already had the strength to kill desolate blood warriors, how far could he grow in the future? With such great potential, the Flame Kingdom had to take this opportunity to kill him no matter what. After all, if he continued to live, he would definitely become a huge threat in the future. And the Purple Moon Kingdom naturally had to do their best to stop him. To the Flame Kingdom, Gray was a huge threat, but to the Purple Moon Kingdom, he was definitely a treasure. Whoosh! A desolate blood warrior from the Flame Kingdom's royal family attacked from afar. Golden flames turned into surging waves that attacked the pile of rubble that buried Gray. A desolate blood warrior from the Purple Moon Kingdom attacked. Purple lightning surged and blocked this surging wave of flames midway. The two collided and a terrifying tremor erupted. Clang! 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 A desolate blood warrior from the Flame Kingdom and a desolate blood warrior from the Purple Moon Kingdom charged forward while crazily exchanging blows. Every time their weapons collided, it would cause ripples that would be enough to kill a normal person. Whoosh! After a series of exchanges, a desolate blood warrior broke through the interception of other desolate blood warriors and took the lead, charging towards the pile of rubble that Gray was buried in. This was an old man with a medium build. He was from the Flame Kingdom. Use your life to pay for my grandsons. The old man with a medium build was filled with killing intent, and his eyes were filled with hostility. He was from the Jeffrey family, which was the family of Tessie Jeffrey, whom Gray had just killed. Tessie Jeffrey was a genius who was destined to shine and become the future pillar of the family. However, before he could fully shine, he had been killed. The pain and ruthlessness in his heart could be imagined. He was already thinking of a way to get rid of his opponent and come to kill Gray to avenge his family's descendant. However, before he could get rid of him, the bald old man had already chosen to die together with Gray. Originally, he was pleasantly surprised. Although Grover Jensen was unlikely to survive, he had still managed to kill this enemy. However, he did not expect that Grover Jensen would not die immediately under the bald old man's desperate attack. No matter what, he could not let Grover Jensen have a chance to live. Thinking of this, a ruthless look appeared in his eyes. The war sword in his hand flickered with a green light, carrying the aura of a divine weapon. He prepared to slash across the air. Whoosh! At this moment, an unexpected scene occurred. Just as he was about to attack, a blue phantom flashed past him, quickly overtaking him and rushing into the pile of rubble. Boom! The pile of rubble was dug away, and a charred figure appeared. The blue figure helped him up and poured a high-grade healing potion into his mouth. During this process, he was unable to stop it in time. The opponent's speed was even faster than him, a desolate blood warrior. Chapter 409. How are you? The blue figure was a woman wearing a blue battlesuit. She had a head of gorgeous purple hair, a slender and graceful figure, and an extremely beautiful face. However, at this moment, there was a bit of worry on her face. It was Sophia. She cultivated a special blood technique that the Purple Moon Kingdom had never shown to the outside world. She had speed that far exceeded those in the same realm. Even the desolate blood warriors were not as fast as her. Only she could surpass the desolate blood warrior of the Flame Kingdom in speed and save Gray before the Flame Kingdom desolate blood warrior could attack Gray. Cough cough, I'm dying. Gray coughed violently. What came out of his mouth was black smoke, as if he was smoking a pipe. Since you're in the mood to joke around, you won't die. Sophia heaved a sigh of relief and rolled her eyes in a slightly reproachful manner. Not dead. The bald old man was bleeding profusely. His chest was almost cut open, but he held on and did not let himself fall. He looked hopefully in Gray's direction. When he saw that Gray was saved by Sophia, and although his injuries were extremely serious, he didn't die, his eyes were filled with unwillingness, anger, and regret. He's not dead yet. With a roar, he seemed to have used up his last bit of strength. His body had no more strength, and he fell to the ground with a thud. I'll bring you to treat your injuries. Although she had given Gray a high-level healing potion, she was still worried. Sophia supported Gray and wanted to return to the back of the Purple Moon Kingdom's army. She wanted to enter the forest so that Gray could use the magic weapon with healing abilities. Stay. The middle-aged old man's eyes were filled with killing intent. A large number of green wind blades appeared around him. Each blade was like a green divine weapon. They whizzed out and attacked Gray and Sophia. Sophia had saved Gray and fed him a healing potion. He did not have the time to stop her. Now that he saw that Sophia was preparing to take Gray for treatment, he finally reacted and brazenly attacked the two of them. Swish, swish, swish. A large number of wind blades, each of which was several meters long, seemed to be made of clear metal, and were abnormally sharp. They covered a large area with Gray and Sophia as the center. Be careful! The people from the Purple Moon Kingdom, who had been paying attention to the battle, warned in shock. Some of the desolate blood warriors from the Purple Moon Kingdom even wanted to stop them, but they were too far away and could not make it in time. Whoosh! Just as Gray and Sophia were about to be submerged, the black fog rolled out, turning into a long black river that swept towards the green wind blades. Chi. After colliding with the long black river, these wind blades were like stones sinking into the sea, completely disappearing without a trace. Gray made his move, blocking the incoming wind blades with his 3 mixed abilities. You actually still have the strength to use your ability. Let's see how long you can last. The middle-sized old man snorted. After his first attack was blocked, he did not stop and attacked again with his second attack. He slashed down with his sword, and a huge wind blade that was more than 10 meters long slashed towards the two of them. It was green all over, like green metal. The edge of the blade was sharp, and it emitted a sharp aura that was not inferior to a magic weapon that had been activated. Gray's expression was slightly solemn. He wanted to force himself to use his blood beast ability again. The old man's guess was right. It was extremely difficult for him to use his blood beast ability as he was heavily injured. Let me do it. However, at this time, Sophia opened her mouth to stop Gray from continuing to use his blood beast ability. She supported Gray's figure and dodged to the side. Whoosh! This was an unimaginable extreme speed. In an instant they had crossed dozens of meters and dodged the huge wind blade that was more than 10 meters long. It was as fast as teleportation. So fast. Gray, who was supported by the old man, could clearly feel this extreme speed. She was only a barbarian blood warrior, but her speed was faster than a desolate blood warrior. This made him very curious. What kind of blood technique did she practice? So fast. The bald old man's complexion was slightly unsightly. Even though he knew that Sophia's speed was extremely fast, he didn't expect that Sophia would actually be able to rely on her speed to dodge his attack that had reached the desolate level at close range. However, it was obvious that he would not give up on killing Gray. After his attack missed, he attacked again. This time, he slashed out a large number of green wind blades. He wanted to use an area of effect attack to prevent Sophia from dodging. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A large amount of cyan-colored wind blades attacked Gray and Sophia in a concentrated manner. It was like a cyan-colored rain of light, beautiful and dazzling, but also extremely dangerous, because every single wisp of this rain of light was enough to instantly cut a person into two halves. Under such a concentrated attack, it was enough to chop a person into pieces. Whoosh! Sophia once again displayed that kind of terrifying speed. She shuttled back and forth in the cyan light rain at high speed. Gray could even feel the sharp tip of the cyan wind blades piercing his body, but in the end they weren't able to hit them, and were dodged by Sophia. In the end, they shuttled through the green rain of light and rushed out of the area covered by the green rain of light. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The middle-built old man attacked Gray and Sophia one after another. The ground around them seemed to have been bombarded indiscriminately and rolled several times. However, Gray and Sophia were like a lone boat in the middle of the sea. Although they were swaying, they did not capsize. However, the middle-built old man's attacks were not completely useless. Faced with the middle-built old man's almost continuous attacks, even with her extreme speed, Sophia could only go with the flow and passively dodge. She was unable to control her own movement. Although she was able to dodge with her speed, she was unable to widen the distance between her and the middle-built old man. Whoosh! Carrying Gray, Sophia once again dodged the middle-built old man's wind blade attack. Gray, who had seen through the problem, forced himself to endure and brazenly attacked the middle-built old man. The rolling black fog was like a rolling river. It surged up and down and attacked the middle-built old man with a terrifying momentum. The middle-built old man's expression changed. In a hurry, his body could not dodge. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The black fog brushed past his back. The armor on his back immediately melted, and a clear cut appeared on his back. Fresh blood flowed out. He reached out to touch his back. His hand was stained with blood. The middle-built old man was furious. Although it was only a scratch and wasn't a serious injury, it was still an injury to him. Of the two opponents, one was seriously injured and was on the verge of death, while the other was fast, but his attack power was weak. It was difficult for him to deal much damage to a desolation-grade expert like him. However, the two of them had miraculously injured him when they worked together. Whoosh, whoosh. A green tornado appeared. It was like a huge spiral weapon surrounded by sharp blades. He slashed out furiously and attacked Gray and Sophia. The spiral weapon stirred up the air violently, causing the surrounding air to spin as well. Even Gray and Sophia could not stand steadily and were almost sucked into it. At the critical moment, Sophia once again found an opening and escaped from the side of the churning huge spiral weapon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Gray and Sophia joined forces and fought the middle-built old man continuously. The two of them sometimes relied on Sophia's speed to avoid the middle-built old man. At other times, they relied on Gray's desolate-level black fog to attack the middle-built old man. The cooperation of the two of them immediately put a lot of pressure on the middle-built old man. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The middle-built old man's arm was grazed by the black fog and was immediately covered in blood. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black fog brushed past the middle-built old man's head. The middle-built old man's hair looked as if it had been sliced by a knife, leaving the top bald. The black fog attacked the middle-built old man from the side. The middle-built old man used a wind blade to shatter the black fog. The black fog splashed everywhere, and one of them happened to hit the middle-built old man's body. The terrifying power immediately melted a piece of flesh on the middle-built old man's body. After a series of battles, Gray and Sophia were unharmed. However, the middle-built old man had many more wounds on his body. Although they were not serious injuries, it was obvious that he was in a sorry state. The middle-built old man had the urge to spit out blood. He was a desolation blood warrior, but he was actually suppressed by the heavily injured Gray and Sophia. This was something he had never expected before the battle. Woo-woo! A low but penetrating whimper was heard. Hearing this whimper, the Flame Kingdom's army broke away from their opponents and retreated. This was the bugle call to retreat. Because of Gray, the Flame Kingdom had lost 3 desolation-level combatants. Their strength had been greatly reduced, and because of the 3 deaths, their morale had dropped. The Flame Kingdom was completely at a disadvantage. In the end, the Flame Kingdom decided to retreat. Humph! The middle-built old man looked at Gray and Sophie with a cold and unwilling gaze, and then flashed towards the retreating Flame Kingdom's army. Being suppressed by Gray and Sophia made him lose face. However, the Flame Kingdom's army had already retreated. If he stayed, he would definitely die. Chase. Naturally, the Purple Moon Kingdom's army wouldn't let the Blaze Kingdom's army get away so easily. The Purple Moon Kingdom's army chased after the Blaze Kingdom's army. In the end, the Blaze Kingdom's army left behind many corpses and successfully escaped. Gotcha! Not long after the Flame Kingdom's army successfully escaped, the heavy rain stopped. The dark clouds slowly dispersed, and rays of sunlight penetrated through the dark clouds and shone on this desolate land. Corpses were strewn all over the land, and blood dyed the rain red. Large puddles were everywhere. Mutilated corpses could be seen everywhere. Some were killed by being cut in half at the waist. Some were killed by being stabbed in the back. Some had their own weapons stabbed into the enemy's body, and the enemy's weapon also stabbed into their own body. Some perished together with the enemy. Scenes after scenes of devastation silently told of the cruelty of this battle. It's finally over. Gray, who was being supported by Sophia, sighed. This battle was finally over. Yes, it's finally over. It's all over. Sophia could not help but sigh. Chapter 4:10. Just as Sophia had predicted, after the battle, the Flame Kingdom's coalition army began to withdraw from the Purple Moon Kingdom. The war that had lasted for half a year had finally come to an end. After half a year of fierce fighting, both the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom had suffered heavy losses. Both kingdoms had lost more than 200,000 people in this war. Adding the two kingdoms together, they had lost close to 500,000 people in this war. Although this was nothing compared to the huge population of the two kingdoms, it should not be forgotten that those who were sent to participate in this war were all elite soldiers from various territories. Even the weakest were elite soldiers who had undergone more than 10 years of training. They were recruited by the nobles from a young age and were selected through harsh training and elimination. Although many of them did not cultivate blood techniques, They relied on high-intensity physical training, and their combat strength was not inferior to ordinary low-level blood warriors. Of course, the loss of soldiers was not the greatest loss in this war. Although elite soldiers were hard to come by, as long as one was willing to pay the price to recruit and train them, they could still be cultivated. The greatest loss was the loss of the upper echelons of the two kingdoms, especially those at the desolate grade level. For existences at the desolate grade level, every one of them could be the foundation of a duke's family. However, in this war, many of them had died. After statistics, the Purple Moon Kingdom had lost 12 desolate grade warriors and 9 desolate grade blood fiends in this war. On the other hand, the Flame Kingdom had lost 15 desolate grade warriors and 10 desolate grade blood fiends. This was an unimaginable loss. It was not something that could be recovered by paying the price. To reach the desolate grade level, resources were indispensable. However, aptitude was also indispensable. Without the appropriate aptitude, it would be difficult to cultivate a desolate grade level no matter how rich the resources were. Of course, this did not mean that there were no benefits in this war. After half a year of fierce fighting and struggling between life and death, those who were able to survive were definitely elite. Many of them had improved by leaps and bounds in this war. Many of them had even advanced in strength during the war. It was believed that in the near future, this group of people would definitely grow and become the new pillars of the two kingdoms. Moreover, in both kingdoms, there were desolate grade warriors whose strength had stagnated. Their strength began to increase again as they climbed towards the peak of the mountain. One day, when they stood at the peak, that would be the day they became king-level warriors. This was probably the most fundamental reason why the Flame Kingdom started this war. King-level warriors were existences that stood at the pinnacle of the continent. Being able to live for more than 200 years meant that they would become the foundation of the continent for an extremely long period of time. Even if they had to sacrifice dozens of desolate blood warriors in exchange, the 4 great kingdoms would definitely be willing to do so. That was close. After leaving the battlefield and being supported by Sophia, Gray found a place with plants and used his reverse nurturing ability to completely heal his injuries. He then heaved a long sigh of relief. Once again, he fell into a crisis and almost died in the war. Even with his strong defense, he had fallen into danger twice. This was war. It was possible for anyone to die. No one could guarantee that they would survive this war. Take Curtis Inferno and Tessie Jeffrey for example. The Flame Kingdom would definitely not want these two to die in this war. Their value was even higher than the average desolate blood warrior. However, these two had died in this war and were forever buried in this battlefield. This was also the reason why the Flame Kingdom's allied army was so furious that one of the desolate blood warriors did not hesitate to die together with him. It could be said that this time, Gray had been completely hated by the Flame Kingdom. He had become someone that the Flame Kingdom wanted to kill. Once he entered the battlefield, he would probably immediately become the target of the Flame Kingdom's allied army. However, he had no choice. On the battlefield, he could not hold back. If he did not kill his opponent would kill him. There was no room for mercy at all. Fortunately, it's finally over. The only fortunate thing was that the Flame Kingdom's strength was no longer enough to support the war. They had begun to withdraw from the Purple Moon Kingdom. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, he would be in danger. After this war, when he entered the battlefield again, there would definitely be many desolate blood warriors targeting him and killing him. On one hand, they wanted to take revenge for Curtis Inferno and Tessie Jeffrey. On the other hand, they saw that he had great potential and wanted to kill him in advance. Now, he already had the strength to kill desolate blood warriors. If he was allowed to grow, how terrifying would he be? If Gray had such an enemy, he would definitely think of a way to kill him. In the Nahum family's tent, the Nahum family's upper echelons were gathered. The atmosphere was quite solemn. Grey Fergus definitely used that silver ore to exchange for a powerful secret treasure from the ghost merchant. Warner Nahum's eyes were filled with jealousy and desire as he spoke. A terrifying healing ability that could quickly heal injuries in a place with plants, a powerful defense that exceeded the norm, and an ability that had never been seen before in the desolate grade. All these signs pointed to the fact that Grey Fergus had an extremely powerful heirloom on him. Moreover, this secret treasure not only had many abilities, but it also did not consume much blood force. Otherwise, it would not have been able to support him for the entire battle. This made him go crazy with jealousy. The other party must have obtained this artifact from the ghost merchant through the silver metal ore. As for the silver metal ore, it had almost brushed past him. If he had managed to snatch it at that time, then the artifact in the other party's hands would definitely have belonged to him. "Master, we must kill him and snatch that secret treasure," a Nahum family desolate blood warrior said with a burning gaze. His opponent was only at the first level of the barbarian rank, but he was able to display the combat strength of a desolate rank. He had even killed 3 desolate rank warriors. If it fell into the hands of a desolate rank warrior like him, how powerful would he be? What he valued the most was the fact that it consumed very little blood power. If he had it in his hands, he might be able to rely on it to contend against a king-level warrior, allowing his family's foundation to be on par with the Kenneth family, which had a king-level warrior overseeing it. "Father, that must be a silver-rank magic weapon, or even a silver-rank magic weapon. We can't let him go just like that," Warner Nahum said with a burning gaze. "A magic weapon that is at least silver rank and extremely special. It consumes very little blood force." The Nahum family master's eyes also flashed with a burning gaze. A magic weapon that was at least silver rank, or even a silver rank magic weapon. Moreover, it seemed to consume very little blood force. It could be used for a long battle. Even as the master of a duke family, he could not help but feel a rush of excitement. "We must kill him and snatch it. He is just a descendant of a noble family. Even if we kill him, the royal family will not stand up for him," a barbarian blood warrior of the Nahum family said with a ruthless look in his eyes. "But his relationship with Her Highness the Second Princess is not shallow. If we touch him, we will definitely become enemies with Her Highness and the Second Princess," an old barbarian blood warrior said with a slight worry. Grey and Sophia's relationship was not shallow. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that if they touched Grey, they would definitely become enemies with Her Highness the Second Princess. Becoming enemies with a princess was definitely not a small matter. If things went wrong, it might even bring disaster to the family. This made him worried. She is just a princess without any real power. So what if we become enemies? With our Nahum family's strength, there is no need to be afraid of her. Warner Nahum sneered in disdain. Although the status of a princess was higher than that of a duke, it was only a status. If they were to compete in strength, the other party would definitely not be comparable to the Nahum family. A duke family that had once produced a king warrior. Only they themselves knew how terrifying their foundation was. It was definitely not something that a person without any real power in the royal family could compare to. "That's right." The head of the Nahum family spoke. Everyone looked at him. As the head of the Nahum family, his words basically represented the final decision of the entire family. "A magic weapon that is at least silver grade. Its value is too great. Even if we become enemies with the second princess, we have to take it. Head of the family, since we have decided to make a move, we had better do it quickly. I'm afraid that the other families will also see through it." The head of the Nahum family, a barbarian blood warrior, said. "I understand." The head of the Nahum family nodded and then said, "Once they leave the territory, they will definitely separate from the royal family and return to their own territory. At that time, we will make a move. Father, leave Grey Fergus to me. I want to skin him alive," Warner Nahum said with a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. More than half a year ago, he had been seriously injured by Gray. His reputation had been swept to the ground, and this made him feel resentful. This time, if he had the chance, he would slowly torture Gray to death. Okay. The head of the Nahum family nodded in agreement. He had never thought of letting Gray go. Since he had already planned to offend the second princess and make a move on Gray, he had never thought of letting Gray go. After all, Gray's talent was not bad. If he was let go, it was likely that he would become a big problem for the Nahum family in the future. Have someone keep an eye on him. Don't let him escape. After thinking for a while, he ordered again. Understood, Warner Nahum said with a flash of coldness in his eyes. In the evening, a grand celebration banquet was held in a city not far from the battlefield. In the banquet, nobles and aristocratic children toasted each other and celebrated the victory of the war with joy on their faces. They also celebrated that they had survived. In the war for half a year, many people had died in the war. Now that the war was finally over and they had finally survived, they could not help but feel deeply grateful. As one of the few people who had outstanding performance in this war, Gray naturally attracted a lot of attention. Many nobles came up to talk and befriend him. The banquet basically did not stop. Suddenly, Gray raised his eyebrows slightly and turned to look behind him. He felt a cold gaze staring at him. When he turned around, he saw a cold gaze staring at him. The owner of the gaze was a handsome but slightly cold man. He knew this man. It was Warner Nahum who had a conflict with him. Chapter 4:11. Warner Nahum? Gray raised his eyebrows. Over the past 6 months, he had met Warner Nahum several times at gatherings, and every time they met, the other party would give him the cold shoulder. However, other than the cold shoulder, the other party did not do anything provocative. He had a sense of propriety, and even if Gray wanted to take the opportunity to make a move against him, he had no chance. Obviously, the other party knew that he was no match for Gray, and had been enduring silently. Even the sword that Gray had snatched away, the other party did not make a sound to ask for it from Gray. The war is over, and I'm afraid it won't be long before the Nahum family makes a move on me. Gray naturally would not be so naive to think that the Nahum family would let the matter rest just because of Sophia. The Nahum family would not let the matter rest just like that. On the one hand, they had been utterly humiliated the last time, and on the other hand, it was probably because of the magical weapon that he had exchanged with the mysterious silver metal ore. Of the various abilities that he had displayed on the battlefield, many of them would certainly be linked by the Nahum family to the magical weapon that he had exchanged with the silver metal ore, and they would probably be even more determined to get their hands on this magical weapon. I'd like to see what the Nahum family can come up with. Even the battlefield couldn't kill me, so how can the Nahum family kill me? Snorting coldly in his heart, Gray shifted his gaze away, too lazy to pay attention to the other party. He could not make a move on him at the banquet just because the other party was staring at him unkindly, so he could only let it be. After the banquet ended, Gray, who was about to leave, was stopped by Sophia, who brought him to a living room. There were already 2 people in the living room. One of them was a handsome young man, and the other was a beautiful woman with a graceful figure. He knew both of them, so he called out, "Your Highness Francis, Your Highness Hylia." Gray, sit. Francis Violet was handsome and amiable. He smiled and gestured for Gray to sit down. Gray didn't need to be reserved. He had seen the 2 of them several times at gatherings, so he sat down on the chair next to them. However, he was rather curious as to why the 2 of them were looking for him. At first, he thought that it was Sophia who was looking for him, but now it seemed that was not the case. "Gray, you really gave us a big scare this time. Not only did you kill Curtis Inferno, you even killed Tessie Jeffrey and a desolate blood warrior from the Flame Kingdom. You alone killed 3 desolate." Francis Violet's voice was filled with amazement. Although Tessie Jeffrey had yet to reach the desolated level, His combat power was also at the desolated level with the help of his mana weapon. Therefore, the Purple Moon Kingdom also treated him as a desolated level combatant. I was just lucky. Besides, this time, if it weren't for your Highness Sophia, I would have died on the battlefield. Gray said with a wry smile. This isn't luck. If it was, why couldn't any of us kill a desolated level, but you killed 3? Hylia Violet smiled and said with a smile on her face. Her breasts were high and her figure was curvy. At this time, she was wearing a close-fitting long dress, which revealed her perfect figure. Don't you think so, Sophia? Indeed, it wasn't luck, Sophia also said with a teasing tone. Her fair skin and gorgeous purple hair complemented each other. At this time, her face was playful, exuding a different kind of beauty than usual. However, I'm sorry to tell you that you've been targeted by the Flame Kingdom. I believe that after today, you will definitely be one of the people that the Flame Kingdom wants to kill the most. Doesn't that mean that I won't be able to step into the Flame Kingdom in this life? I originally wanted to go to the Flame Kingdom for a vacation. The atmosphere was quite relaxed, and Gray was also relaxed and joking. You still want to go to the Flame Kingdom for a vacation? Dream on. I bet that once you step into the Flame Kingdom's territory, there will immediately be king-class experts coming to kill you. Sophia rolled her eyes and said, Indeed, you won't be able to go to the Flame Kingdom in this life. The other 2 kingdoms, the Scarlet Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom, have a close relationship with the Purple Moon Kingdom, so you can go there. Frances Violet laughed and replied, Don't worry about it. They chatted for a while, and Frances Violet's expression became slightly solemn. Gray, thank you for eliminating 3 great enemies for the Purple Moon Kingdom. I express my gratitude to you on behalf of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Your Highness Frances is too polite. Gray responded with a straight face. You killed 3 desolate-level experts this time and accumulated a lot of military merit. After the 3 of us discussed, we decided to apply for a noble title from the royal family. Noble title? Grimm was shocked and looked at Frances Violet in surprise. He almost thought that he had heard wrong. He never thought that they would use military merits to apply for a noble title for him. The noble title that Frances mentioned was definitely not a noble title, but a kingdom noble title. Although he knew that the Purple Moon Kingdom would not treat him badly for killing 3 desolate-level experts, he did not expect that they would decide to give him a noble title as a reward. But I'm a descendant of a noble title, and the Sidney family. Gray raised his eyebrows slightly. There was no need to debate whether a noble title was good or not. It was definitely several times better than a noble title. Not to mention other things, just the scope of the noble title's application in the entire Purple Moon Kingdom was enough to make many people scramble for it. With this identity, he would be able to enjoy a lot of preferential treatment in the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. However, his current identity was a descendant of a noble title. If he accepted the royal title, he would have to leave the Sidney family. This was no different in nature from the Smalley family defecting from the Sidney family. Don't worry about the Sidney family. I've already talked to Soroyan and they have agreed. Frances Violet waved his hand slightly and said, And it's not to let the Fergus family leave the Sidney family. It's just to let you leave alone. The kingdom's noble title will be inherited by your bloodline, and the Fergus family's noble title can be inherited by your eldest brother's bloodline. This, Gray was a little hesitant. In fact, he didn't care too much about the title. He didn't want to be distracted by it. He even had the idea of letting Bernal inherit the title when Bernal's strength reached the level of a berserker. Thank you for your kindness, your highnesses, but I don't want to spend too much energy on the governance of the territory. I want to focus on my cultivation more. After thinking about it, he decided to refuse. Let us finish first. Don't rush to make a decision. Frances Violet shook his head. Focus on your cultivation. The 3 of us agree. If you are distracted by your cultivation because of the territory, it will be a great loss for the Purple Moon Kingdom. The royal family has already considered this situation. They have specially set up schools to train many talents in governance. I can make the decision to assign a few to your territory and let them govern it for you. You only need to go to the territory once a year to collect taxes. Gray was still a little hesitant. Suddenly encountering such a situation, he was a little unsure whether this title would do more harm than good or harm to him. What's there to hesitate about? Seeing that Gray was still hesitant, Sophia said unhappily. Don't forget that the last time you had a conflict with the Nahum family. Although I helped you suppress it, the Nahum family might not let it go. With the Fergus family's current status as a noble, if the Nahum family really wants to deal with you, even the royal family can't stand up for you. Thank you, your highnesses. I'm willing. Hearing Sophia's words, Gray finally made up his mind. He stood up and bowed slightly to the three of them. Indeed, if he became a noble of the kingdom, the Nahum family would definitely not dare to make a move on him and the Fergus family so blatantly. His current strength was quite strong, and he even had a forbidden weapon in his hands. However, he did not dare to say that he was completely fearless of the Nahum family. A family that had once produced a king-level powerhouse would not be simple. It was very likely that they also had a forbidden weapon. If that was the case, the deterrence effect of the forbidden weapon in his hands would be greatly reduced. What worried him even more was that the other family almost certainly had a silver-level magic weapon. Silver-level magic weapons had an extremely strong effect on combat strength. Although not every desolate blood warrior could unleash the combat strength of a king-level warrior when they held one in their hands. However, even the weakest desolate blood warrior would be extremely dangerous if he had such a silver-grade magic weapon in his hands. If he really met the other party with a silver-level magic weapon, he would probably have to use spatial teleportation to escape. After resting for a day, the Purple Moon Kingdom's coalition army began to withdraw from the Duke of Nelm's territory. Most of them would return directly to their own territories, while the important figures of the noble families of the various kingdoms would follow them to the capital to receive the kingdom's rewards. A few days later, the coalition army left the Duke of Nelm's territory. From time to time, there would be teams leaving the coalition army and returning to their own territories. The Nahum family sent people to keep a close eye on Gray and the others. Once Gray and the Fergus family left the coalition army, they would be ready to attack the Fergus family and Gray. Soon, the coalition army approached the vicinity of Sydney's territory. It was the turn of the enfeoffed nobles of Sydney's territory to leave the coalition army and return to their territories. The Fergus family would definitely be among them. However, at this moment, a piece of news spread from the royal family's team and quickly spread to all the noble families. What, His Highness Francis is going to apply for a title for Grey Fergus? Warner Nahum, who had heard the news, crushed his wine glass with a crack. The scarlet wine spilled all over his hand like fresh blood. His heart was filled with violent emotions. He had been waiting to kill Grey Fergus, but he did not expect such a change to happen. What should we do? Grey Fergus will become a noble soon. After he becomes a noble, if we attack him, the royal family will definitely not ignore it. Why don't we take advantage of the fact that he hasn't attended the ceremony and kill him directly? After all, he's not an official noble yet. Some of the Nahum family's higher-ups said with ruthlessness in their eyes. The eyes of the Nahum family's head flickered, and he finally sighed. It's too late. The news has already spread. If we dare to attack him again, the royal family will definitely not ignore it. Father, are we just going to let it go? Warner Nahum said unwillingly. Of course not, but he's already a noble after all. If we want to attack him, we have to be more careful. Let's stop the operation first and find another opportunity next time. We must not be discovered by the royal family. Duke Nahum's eyes flashed with coldness. Chapter 412. 10 days later, the remaining upper echelons of the noble families arrived at the imperial city. After a year, Grey came to the imperial city once again. The imperial city was rumored to have been built when the Purple Moon Kingdom was founded, but there were also rumors that it had been preserved from the era of the Empire. 1,000 years, or even more, had filled it with the vicissitudes of life. One could feel the vicissitudes and the passage of time from its body. It was majestic and grand, like a sleeping beast that would wake up at any time. This was not a metaphor, but a fact. After 1,000 years of perfection by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the ground and even the walls of the city were full of rune patterns. Once these rune patterns were fully activated, they would have amazing defensive and terrifying offensive power. And the most terrifying thing was that there might be an ultimate method in the rumors. The power of the imperial city's rune patterns could be used to enhance a person's body. Even a desolate blood warrior could have the strength of a king warrior after being enhanced by the power of the rune patterns. Within the royal family, there weren't many king-class experts, but there were definitely many desolate blood warriors. One could only imagine how shocking it would be if these experts were supported by the power of the runes in the capital and all of them had the strength of a king-class warrior. Even if the Flame Kingdom came, they would definitely be defeated. Grey did not know whether this rumor was true or not, but he vaguely felt that it was very likely to be true. He also felt that, in contrast to the Purple Moon Kingdom, the other three kingdoms more or less had similar method. The Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, and the Jewel Kingdom were able to contend with the Flame Kingdom, which had more king warriors than them. Forming an alliance was one thing, but the most important thing was probably this kind of ultimate foundation. The entrance of the imperial city was bustling with noise and excitement. There were nobles and commoners, all of whom were cheering and celebrating the return of a group of nobles led by Francis Violet. Francis Violet stood on a desolate level blood beast, looking fresh and handsome, but not lacking in dignity. Behind him were Sophia and Hilya, as well as other important members of the royal family. Behind them were the Duke's family, the Marquis family, and other nobles. Grey mingled among the upper echelons of the marquises and was not too conspicuous. Although his battle achievements were extremely terrifying, his reputation among the commoners and nobles of the royal city was extremely low. Almost no one recognized him. He rode a warhorse in a low-key manner and rode alongside Zeloyan, Polly, and Darren. After entering the royal city, he and the other three stayed in the residence arranged by the royal family. "I really didn't expect you to be able to reach this step." In the residence of the four of them, Zeloyan sighed. He still clearly remembered the first time he met Grey a few years ago. At that time, although the other party was also quite talented and was already a middle-level blood warrior before the age of 17, it was absolutely unimaginable that the other party had grown to the point where he could kill desolate blood warriors in just a few years' time and become famous throughout the Purple Moon Kingdom. Grey smiled. With the ability to transform, it was within his expectations that he would be able to reach this stage. However, he was still quite happy that he was able to grow to this stage. After thinking about it, he thanked the three of them solemnly. "Thank you very much for the royal title." Under normal circumstances, nobles with feudal titles who left the royal family would be hated. However, the three of them were very generous and did not have any dissatisfaction with him. This made him feel very touched. "No need. The Sidney family has done enough." Polly shook her head. Her blonde hair was dazzling, her eyes were huge, and her skin was as white as ivory. After experiencing the great change in her family for a year, she appeared to be more mature and steady. She did not have any resentment towards Grey for leaving the Sidney family. Grey had done a lot for the Sidney family. If it were not for Grey risking his life to save them, they might have died in the pursuit. After that, he risked his life to protect them and came to the royal city to inherit the royal title. It could be said that the reason the Sidney family could still exist was all because of Gray. Now that Gray was facing the threat of the Nahum family, he urgently needed such an identity to protect himself. She naturally had no reason to be resentful or stop him. Gray, don't feel too burdened. Even if my father was still around, he would definitely support you in accepting the royal title. Zero patted Gray's shoulder as he spoke. He could tell that Gray was still brooding over the matter of accepting the knighthood. Father, at the mention of the Sidney family head, Polly and Darren could not help but feel a little sad. Even though a year had passed, some pain could never be forgotten. That day's incident seemed to have happened yesterday. It was still vivid in their minds and unforgettable. Many days and nights they had been having nightmares about that night. Gray looked at Polly and Darren, then at Zeloing, who also had a hint of sadness in his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he looked at the three of them and spoke seriously. If I can become a king-class expert, I will kill the king of assassins to avenge the old Marquis. Back then, the old Marquis had treated the Fergus family and Gray extremely well. When he was not strong enough to go against the Orca family, it was the old Marquis who had intimidated the Orca family and prevented the Orca family from making a move on him. He had already heard about this from Zeloing. In addition, Zeloing and the other two had magnanimously allowed him to leave the Sidney family, which made him feel a little ashamed. In the end, it had prompted him to make such a decision. Gray, thank you. Polly raised her head in surprise and looked at Gray in a daze. Her eyes were filled with gratitude and excitement. Gray, thank you. Zeloing and Darren's eyes were also filled with surprise. They stood up with Polly and bowed 90 degrees to Gray. The talent that Gray had now displayed was highly valued even by the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom. He had a high chance of becoming a king-class expert. If it was him, he might really be able to kill the king of assassins and avenge the dead Sidney family members. There's no need to be like this. The old Marquis treated me well back then. If there's a chance, I will naturally not refuse. Gray helped the three of them up. Of course, the prerequisite is that I can become a king-class warrior. Maybe I can't become a king-class warrior, and your expectations will be in vain. No, you will definitely become a king-class warrior. Polly looked at Gray with her beautiful eyes and said with a determined gaze. Looking at Gray like this, a strange ripple appeared in her heart. It was as if a small stone had been thrown into a pool of still water, causing strange ripples. A few days later, Gray, Zeloing, and Darren were picked up by the royal carriage and entered the palace to participate in the reward banquet. One by one, the nobles came forward to receive their rewards. The rewards were given according to the amount of battle achievement. There were rewards in terms of money, magic potions, magic weapons, and even titles. Among them, a Marquis family was born. The Purple Moon Kingdom's 3 dukes and 7 marquises were officially changed to 3 dukes and 8 marquises. The one who was promoted was the original Earl family, the Leo family. This was a family whose foundation was not inferior to the Marquis family. Gray, Earl Fergus, and the others had accepted the invitation of this family and participated in the banquet hosted by this family. This time, this family had killed many barbarian blood warriors and finally accumulated enough battle achievements to become the Marquis family as they wished. Gray received the title of Earl as a reward. This reward was a little small for his battle achievements, but considering that it was his first time receiving a title of Earl, this reward seemed a little too generous. The other families basically started from Lord, Baron, and Viscount through the hard work of several generations or even more than a dozen generations. However, he had achieved it in one step and was directly rewarded with the title of Earl. This was very rare in the history of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The only family that surpassed him was the Sidney family. Because their battle achievements were too outstanding, the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family directly rewarded the Marquis family. In a room in the palace, Gray met Francis, Violet, and Sophia. Here, the areas marked with red lines on the map are the lands prepared for you. Each of them is about 50,000 square kilometers. Choose one yourself. Francis Violet handed a map of the Purple Moon Kingdom to Gray. On the map, there were more than a dozen areas marked with red lines. Some were slightly oval in shape, some were shaped like gears, and some were shaped like crescent moons. The shapes were all different, but in terms of area they should be about the same size. 50,000 square kilometers was more than twice the size of the Fergus family's current territory. It was not difficult to see that the kingdom's nobles were treated better than the other nobles of the same rank. And this was only one aspect of the preferential treatment. There should be more preferential treatment in other aspects. It was no wonder that the kingdom's nobles of the same rank were generally more powerful than the other nobles of the same rank. It was not without reason. These are all places with excellent natural conditions. My brother and I specially selected them. At the side, Sophia explained with a smile. Gray thanked her gratefully and finally chose a crescent-shaped territory. There was a large lake in the territory that was rich in fish resources. Just this lake alone would bring in a lot of income every year. Of course, the most important thing was that this place was very close to the Serene territory. It should only take 2 to 3 days to reach the Serene territory. After selecting the territory, Gray chatted with the two while drinking the milk tea that the palace maids had prepared. There was no particular topic. The content of their conversation was very casual and unspecific. Although the two were of noble status, they did not use their status to oppress others. Gray did not find it difficult to get along with the two of them. Of course, this was only Gray's point of view. It was unknown if others would think the same. You said last time that you wanted to travel to the Flame Kingdom. You definitely can't go to the Flame Kingdom, but there is a chance in the Jewel Kingdom. Francis Violet smiled as he looked at Gray. Chapter 4:13. What opportunity? Gray asked curiously. The Purple Moon, Jewel, and Crimson Kingdoms hold an exchange for the younger generation every few years. This time, it's the Jewel Kingdom's turn to host it. You'll definitely be on the list of participants. You can take this opportunity to have a good time in the Jewel Kingdom. Sophia said with a smile. When exactly will it be held? Gray asked with great interest. He was indeed very interested in such an exchange, not only because he could have a good time in the Jewel Kingdom, but also because he could meet the geniuses of the younger generation in the other two kingdoms. This was an opportunity to broaden his horizons and get to know the younger generation in the other two kingdoms. The exact time hasn't been decided yet, but it should be held this year. Francis Violet said, seeing Gray's great interest. I've heard that the Jewel Kingdom is rich in gemstones, and there are stone gambling dens there. Many people become rich in a day there. Is that true? It's true. Many of the gemstones produced in the Jewel Kingdom can be used as precious materials for refining rune items. So, there are indeed some people who become rich because of stone gambling. Sophia nodded. However, there are very few people like that. More people lose their family fortune because of stone gambling. The raw stones that can be placed in the stone gambling house have already been screened several times. The probability of a gem being cut out is not high. Speaking of which, there is a stone gambling den in the royal city. Do you want to give it a try? Francis Violet said with a smile. No need. I'm just a little curious. It's not too late to take part in the exchange. I'll see it when I get to the Jewel Kingdom. Gray shook his head. The stone gambling in this world and in his previous life were different, but the nature was the same. Although he had heard of stone gambling in his previous life, he had never seen it before. So, he couldn't help but be curious. Gray did not stay in the capital for long. On the second day after receiving his knighthood, he left the capital with the 3 siblings and returned to Sydney Hill. Like Gray and the others, there were many families who chose to leave at this time. One of them was the Cumberland family. Because there was a long way to go, Gray and the others traveled together with the Cumberland family. When you go to the territory, please come to the Cumberland family as a guest. They'll probably come to disturb you in a few days. Please don't find us annoying then." After traveling for 7 or 8 days, the two sides parted ways. Marquis Cumberland and Jessia invited Grey, and Grey agreed with a smile. His fief was right next to the Cumberland fief. It was separated from the Sydney fief by the Cumberland fief. He had to pass through the Cumberland fief on his way to his fief. Although I knew that his name would spread throughout the Purple Moon Kingdom, I didn't expect it to happen so soon. Marquis Cumberland exclaimed in the Cumberland family's carriage. In just over half a year, he's become one of the most popular people in the Purple Moon Kingdom. He's even become a count of the kingdom. We underestimated him, Jessia said with a strange look in her beautiful eyes. She had seen Grey's outstanding performance on the battlefield. He had always been one of the most dazzling people on the battlefield. The last battle where he killed 3 desolate level combatants in a row amazed her even more. Yes, he's very impressive. Audrey giggled. Sister, since you admire him so much, you might as well go after him. When the time comes, you'll just have to give birth to a few more children. The titles of both sides will be settled. Moreover, with his talent, his children will definitely be gifted. But sister, your opponent is very strong. Putting aside Her Highness Sophia, I saw the way Sister Polly looked at him. It's obvious that he's different. He'll definitely be a strong competitor for you in the future. You little brat, how dare you tease me? Jessia's face was slightly flushed. She pretended to hit Audrey, who quickly begged for mercy. The carriage was suddenly filled with playful laughter. 3 days later, Grey, Serene, and the other two returned to Sydney Hill. Serene and the other two held a banquet in Sydney City and invited all the nobles. They took out part of the wealth awarded by the royal family and rewarded each noble family according to their military achievements. Among them, the Richens family was promoted to a count family. As the most powerful family among the original 6 Viscount families of Sydney Hill, they were originally the family closest to the title of count. However, due to the sudden rise of the Fergus family, the Richens family finally missed the title of count. The Smalley family separated from the Sydney family, and the title of count was once again vacant. This was an opportunity for the Richens family. The Richens family seized this opportunity and performed extremely well in this war. Not only did he accumulate enough battle merits, but Viscount Lykins had also broken through to become a berserker on the battlefield through life and death tempering. He had fulfilled the last condition of being a count and finally obtained the title of count. The Fergus family received a lot of rewards. In terms of military achievements, the Fergus family was definitely not inferior to the Richens family. Even if Grey had separated from the Richens family and had to be removed from Grey's military achievements, the Earl Fergus's military achievements would still surpass that of the Richens family by relying on the corpse-controlling magic weapon. However, the Fergus family's title had reached its limit, so it was naturally impossible for them to be rewarded with the title of count. From this point, it was not difficult to see that the path of promotion of the feudal nobles was easy to be capped. Fortunately, the Fergus family received a lot of rewards. Although they had suffered heavy losses in this war, and even several feudal nobles had died, and more than half of the soldiers they had brought with them had died, it was definitely not a loss. "Brother, are you also a noble now?" At the banquet, Grey was surrounded by the members of the Fergus family. Sarah stared at Grey with sparkling eyes as she asked. She wore a light yellow dress, and like Grey, she had jet-black hair and dark blue eyes. As she grew older, she became more and more beautiful. However, her pair of sparkling eyes with a hint of craftiness revealed her somewhat mischievous nature. She had been able to sit on Hanhu and show off in Fergus City back then. Now she had become even worse. Relying on her strength as a high-ranked blood warrior, she had taught many of the noble children who bullied others in the territory a lesson. However, with Grey around, the families behind these noble children naturally did not dare to cause trouble for her. "You can say that." Grey smiled and nodded. What title is it? Earl Fergus hurriedly asked. Although he knew that first Prince Francis Violet had applied for a title from the royal family for Grey, he did not know what kind of title he had applied for. Like you, father, it's also an earl, Grey said. It's actually an earl. Caroline liked to read all kinds of books, and was naturally not unfamiliar with the matters of the kingdom's nobles. When she heard that Grey had actually been conferred the title of earl, she could not help but be shocked. To be conferred the title of earl in one go was extremely rare, even in the entire history of the Purple Moon Kingdom. It was not difficult to see the importance that the Purple Moon Kingdom placed on Grey from this. It's actually also an earl. Bernal could not help but cry out in surprise. Having been on the battlefield and interacting with all kinds of nobles, he naturally understood the difference between feudal nobles and the kingdom's nobles. He also understood very well the status of an earl in the kingdom's noble circle. Congratulations, Grey. Madame de Milan's face was full of smiles, and the wrinkles on her face smoothed out. In the entire Fergus family, she was probably the happiest one. Originally, Bernal had no fate with the title of earl, but unexpectedly, Grey had left the Fergus family and obtained the title alone. This way, Bernal would naturally have the right to inherit the title once again. Thank you. Grey could naturally guess the reason why she was so happy, but he did not care. From the beginning, he had never thought of snatching Bernal's right to inherit the title. The reason why he had become the heir of the title was because of external conditions. If he had not become a berserker and become the heir of the title, the Fergus family would definitely not have become an earl family. After all, even the most basic conditions were not met. Has the territory been confirmed? Earl Fergus forced himself to calm down, but one could clearly feel the slight tremor in his voice. Just the title of earl was already something he yearned for. He thought that it was the goal of his life. However, he did not expect that the Fergus family would actually become a noble of the kingdom in his lifetime, and an earl family at that. He felt that it was unreal. It has been confirmed. I've chosen a place that is rather close to the Sydney territory. Grey took out the map of the Purple Moon Kingdom from his purple ring and pointed to a crescent-shaped area as he introduced it to everyone. It's so big. Why does it feel like this territory is so much bigger than Fergus territory? Sarah came forward and looked at the crescent-shaped territory in surprise. It is indeed a little bigger than Fergus territory. It's a total of 50,000 square kilometers, Greg said with a smile. Wow, Sarah was speechless. Earl Fergus and the others were also shocked and surprised. As expected of a noble of the kingdom, the territory was actually so much bigger than a noble of the same level. Moreover, from the map, this territory was extremely rich. In the future, the taxes of this territory would probably be several times that of Fergus territory. In order not to delay my training, the royal family will temporarily send someone to help me take care of this territory. However, I still have to go and take a look. I'm going to take a look in a few days, and then we'll all go together. Grey said. Okay. Earl Fergus held the map with trembling hands. He looked at the crescent-shaped territory on the map and said the word, okay, twice in a row. The Fergus family could have 2 earls, and one of them was a noble of the kingdom. It could be used in the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. He felt that even if he were to die now, he would be satisfied. The eyes of the others were also shining. Although the title and territory belonged to Grey, as members of the Fergus family, they could also get a lot of benefits. Not only could they get a higher status, but they could also get a lot of privileges. Chapter 4:14. After the reward banquet, the Fergus family returned to Fergus Castle. Zero and his siblings followed. The original Sydney Castle had been completely destroyed, and the new one was still under construction. Thus, the Fergus family invited Zero and his siblings to Fergus Castle as guests. After 2 days of hurrying, the group returned to Fergus Castle. It wasn't the original Fergus Castle. The new Fergus Castle had been completed, and the Fergus family had already moved in. This was a huge castle built on top of a mountain. It was similar to the original Fergus castle, but it was several times bigger than the original Fergus castle. Thick walls lay horizontally, exquisite buildings stood tall, and the ground was paved with white stones. Flower beds adorned the sides of the road, and there were gardens, pavilions, artificial mountains, and ponds inside. The Fergus family had spent a lot of money on this castle, but it seemed like it was worth it. In addition to the new castle, Fergus City was also being expanded. Of course, it couldn't be completed so quickly. It was bound to be a long process. After returning to Fergus Castle, Earl Fergus began to reward the enfeoffed nobles who had participated in the war. All the clans received generous rewards. 2 soldiers with outstanding military service were enfeoffed as lords, causing the 2 soldiers to be extremely excited. Although he had narrowly escaped death and almost died on the battlefield many times, the rewards were also great. After becoming a lord, even if it was the lowest rank, he would still be given a fief. From now on, his life would be fundamentally different from that of an ordinary person. A few days later, Grey and the Fergus family left Fergus Castle for Grey's territory. Zero and his siblings were also invited. They passed by the Cumberland family, paid a visit, and continued on their journey. A day later, they arrived at Grey's territory. The carriage moved slowly within Grey's territory, admiring the natural scenery along the way. Just as Sophia had said, the natural conditions of this territory were excellent. The terrain was flat, and there were many fields and farmlands. Villages could be seen frequently. Just these farmlands alone were enough to generate a large amount of tax every year. After walking for half a day, they saw a lake. This was an extremely huge lake with beautiful scenery. There was even a small island in the middle of the lake. This was the largest lake in the territory. This was the most unique feature of this territory, and also its biggest source of income. The lake water was dark green, and there were many fat fish in it. With Grey's eyesight, he could even see that some of the fish were as long as a meter. Every year, the lake would bring great wealth to the territory. At this point, Grey and the others had reached their destination on their journey to the territory. This territory was known as the Half Moon Territory when it was under the jurisdiction of the Purple Moon Kingdom. The castle in the territory was known as the Half Moon Castle. This castle wasn't located in a large city, nor was it located on a hill that was easy to defend but difficult to attack. Instead, it was located on a small island in the middle of the lake. If one wanted to reach this castle, one had to take a boat. Lord Grey, the Half Moon Castle, had already received the news and came to welcome them on a boat. The first to welcome them were 2 middle-aged men. Both of them had brown hair. One of them was slightly taller, while the other was slightly shorter and had a medium build. The taller man was called Hogan Marcus, while the medium-built man was called Simpson Carey. They were sent by the royal family to manage this territory for Grey. One of them was in charge of the territory's governance, while the other was in charge of the territory's finances. Under their lead, Grey and the others took a boat to the small island. This was a small island that was tens of kilometers in size. It was shaped like an irregular gear, and there was a huge castle in the middle. "It's so big." Seeing this castle, Sarah, Polly, and the others were all shocked. The castle was built with white stone, with walls lying horizontally and a tall steeple. It was extremely huge, even bigger than the newly built Fergus Castle. However, there were obvious signs of weathering on the surface. It was obvious that this castle had existed for a long time. Lord Grey. At the entrance of the castle, a group of servants stood respectfully on both sides of the castle entrance to welcome them. Among them, there were young female servants who wore black and white maid outfits. Their figures were slender, and their appearances were all above average. There was a chef in a chef's outfit. There was a male servant in a male servant's outfit who was in charge of manual labor. There was also a young man in a pharmacist's robe. These were all gifted by the royal family. They were all adopted and raised by the royal family from orphans. They were usually sent by the royal family to serve the members of the royal family and a small number of nobles who were highly valued by the royal family. Gray nodded with satisfaction. He was extremely satisfied with the essential staff of the castle gifted by the royal family. He didn't have to worry about hiring them. Moreover, these people had been professionally trained by the royal family. They were extremely skilled in all kinds of occupations, and could not be compared to those hired temporarily. Among these people, Gray was most satisfied with the young man in the pharmacist's robe. This was a pharmacist trained by the royal family. Although he was not a master pharmacist, he was still very precious. The training of pharmacists placed great importance on talent. Without the corresponding talent, it was very difficult to become a master pharmacist even if one followed a master pharmacist all year round. Sir Gray, according to the castle's records, this castle has existed since the founding of the Purple Moon Kingdom. After entering the castle, Hogan Marcus and Simpson Carey respectfully introduced the castle to Gray. Their attitudes were extremely respectful. After receiving the royal family's appointment, they naturally investigated Gray, the lord. What they found out shocked them, but they couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. He was conferred the title of Count on the first conferment of nobility. As they were very knowledgeable in this aspect, they could naturally see that the royal family valued this lord. After learning about Gray's achievements on the battlefield, they were even more ecstatic. Following such a lord with great potential who was valued by the royal family, their status would definitely rise. In fact, they had already felt the rise in status. Recently, they had received many invitations from nobles. Some of the nobles who ignored them before were now very enthusiastic. It existed since the founding of the kingdom. Is it a building from the empire? Gray's eyes lit up as he asked. If this castle was a building from the empire, then he would have to investigate it carefully. He might be able to find a secret room or something. To be able to own such a huge castle, even during the empire, one's status would probably not be low. If he could find a hidden secret room, he would definitely be able to obtain a very valuable harvest. I don't know. There are no detailed records in the castle's records. Hogan Marcus shook his head and said. The group of people toured around the castle. There were gardens, fake mountains, ponds, pavilions, a training ground paved with hard stone, and even a small horse farm. It could be said that all the entertainment facilities of nobles were available here. However, although the castle was huge and magnificent, it had been a long time after all, and there were inevitably signs of weathering in some places. It's a very good castle, but it has been too long since anyone lived in it. The wind is very strong, and it needs to be repaired. Earl Fergus said. Indeed, it needs to be repaired. Gray nodded. Although they probably wouldn't stay in this castle for long, it was essential to repair it. This place was in the middle of the lake, and it would be quite cool in the summer. In the future, when the summer was hot, the Fergus family could come here to avoid the summer heat. As for the money needed to repair it, it was naturally not a problem. Not to mention that the annual tax revenue of this territory was extremely huge. Just the 30 million gold coins he obtained in the king's tomb was enough to build a few more castles like this, let alone repair it. The group spent a full half an hour to walk around the entire castle. During the process, Gray did not forget to look for hidden secret rooms, but he found nothing. The castle was too huge, and the buildings were quite dense. It was almost like a maze. This bedroom is mine. The main building of the castle had a total of 3 floors, and there were many bedrooms on the 3rd floor. Sarah immediately chose a bedroom facing the garden. Gray, Earl Fergus, and the rest also chose a room to stay in when they came here in the future. In the evening, everyone had a fish feast. Grilled fish and fish soup. The ingredients were freshly caught from the lake, and the chef was sent over by the royal family. The taste was excellent, and Gray and the others were full of praise. At midnight, everyone had fallen asleep. Woo-woo! Suddenly, a low whimper sounded. It was like the sound of the wind blowing through the building, but also like the sound of a wild beast in the night. It would sound from time to time. Whoosh! In the bedroom, Gray suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. The look in his eyes was extremely sharp. With his strength as a barbarian blood warrior, his hearing was naturally extremely powerful. He could clearly hear the whimpering sound. He was sure that it was not the sound of wind blowing through the building. Instead, it sounded like the roar of a creature that he had seen before. He put on his clothes, left the bedroom, and walked down the stairs. He followed the intermittent whimper to find the source. He did not light a lamp. The infrared perception from the shadow snake allowed him to have night vision. Even in the dark, he could clearly distinguish things. Following the sound, he searched all the way and finally found the place where the sound came from. It was a well. They had seen this well when they were touring the castle before. According to the introduction of the castle servant, this well was a dry well. It should not have been used for a long time. Woo-woo, more cries could be heard coming from the ancient well. Gray narrowed his eyes and took out a rope from the purple ring. After tying it to the edge of the well, he dived down along the rope. Chapter 4:15. The dry well was very deep. Following the rope, Gray dived for a total of 70 to 80 meters before finally reaching the bottom of the dry well. Crack! The sound of something being crushed was heard. Gray looked down and saw that it was a skeleton. The thing that he had just crushed was the calf of this skeleton. On the battlefield, he had seen countless corpses. Naturally, Gray was not afraid of a mere skeleton. He squatted down and looked at the skeleton. The bones of the skeleton had become extremely loose and fragile. It could be easily crushed by foot. At least a few hundred years had passed. He looked up and saw that there was another skeleton not far away. He walked over to investigate and found that it was also an extremely old skeleton. Looking in the direction where the skeleton had fallen, a deep passage appeared in front of him. In the passage there were more than 10 hazy white light creatures. These white lights were floating in the air. They seemed to have discovered him and wanted to fly over. However, when they were about to leave the passage, they seemed to be blocked by an invisible wall and could not leave the passage. They were like wild beasts that had seen their prey. They whimpered unwillingly and kept hitting the invisible wall. However, they could not break it. As expected, seeing these spirits, Gray was not surprised. Instead, he looked as if he had expected it. When he had heard the sound earlier, he had already guessed it. Now, he had confirmed it. Gray had dealt with spirits many times. He had seen abandoned villages full of spirit. He had also seen hundreds of thousands of spirits walking in the night. He had also seen fox beasts that could control spirit. Gray understood spirits very well. Therefore, after hearing the whimpering sound, he immediately determined that it should be the voice of a spirit. I didn't expect the secret room of the castle to be here. When he had been touring the castle, Gray had looked for it to see if he could find the secret room of the castle. However, he had found nothing. He did not expect the secret room of the castle to be in this dry well. If he had not heard the howls of these spirits, he would not have been able to find this secret room for a long time. Is some kind of rune mechanism blocking these spirits? Gray looked at the entrance of the passage. There was nothing there. There were no walls or barriers. However, the spirits were blocked there, so they could not come out. Gray couldn't help but be curious. This was the first time he had seen something that could actually block a specter. He walked over. Woo-woo. Seeing Gray approach, the spirits roared even more fiercely and kept attacking. However, they were blocked by an invisible barrier and could not rush out of the passage. Gray pulled out the sword at his waist and tried to stab forward. With his current strength, he was naturally not afraid of a mere specter. Moreover, he definitely had to explore the secret chamber this time. During the process, he would definitely have to enter this passage. He wanted to see if there was an invisible barrier at the entrance of the passage that sealed the passage. The sword did not encounter the slightest obstruction. It easily passed through the entrance of the passage and entered the passage. There was no invisible barrier like he had guessed. Seeing the sword coming in, some spirits pounced on this section of the sword. The cold aura that could freeze people's souls was immediately transmitted to the sword. However, the sword was a dead object. Naturally, these spirits would not attach themselves to it. These spirits passed through the sword. The unwilling spirits turned back and danced around the sword. Crackle! A trace of thunder and lightning power attached to the sword. A purple thunder and lightning appeared on the sword. For Gray, it could be said that the thunder and lightning was less than 1% of his strength. However, it brought about a destructive power to these spirits. Just by being sputtered by the thunder and lightning, these spirits screamed and their bodies quickly disintegrated. In the end, more than a dozen spirits dissipated. After killing all the spirits, Gray reached his hand into the tunnel. His hand easily passed through it. The invisible barrier that could block the spirits could not stop him. He strode into the room. No matter what, he had to investigate this secret room. As he walked forward, he saw more than a dozen skeletons. The degree of weathering was different. Obviously, they were people of different times. If Gray guessed correctly, these spirits should be the remains of the owners of these skeletons. This should be a place that could breed spirit. The tunnel curved downward. It was obviously deep underground. The surrounding walls and floor were all built with a very hard stone. Even Gray could not leave too many traces of damage on this stone. Gray couldn't help but feel a little expectant. A secret room that could be built with such precious stones would definitely contain extremely precious treasures. Of course, he could not help but be careful. This secret room could not be lacking in mechanisms. Moreover, the power of these mechanisms would not be small. Especially the skeletons from before. Gray had checked them. All the skeletons were preserved in perfect condition. There were no wounds left by sharp blades or other attack. This made him feel a little strange. How did these people die? Pop! Suddenly, a strange invisible wave suddenly appeared. It was invisible and intangible, and it was impossible to see or detect. Gray was swept by this invisible wave without noticing it at all. Hiss! Gray suddenly groaned in pain and pressed his head with his hand. In that instant, he felt as if he was being pricked by a needle. It was as if his soul was being pulled out like a carrot by an invisible hand. What kind of attack is this? Gray sucked in a breath of cold air. With his barbarian blood warrior realm, he was unknowingly hit by this attack. One could imagine how terrifying this attack was. Now, he finally understood how those people died. Without a doubt, these people were killed by this invisible attack. It was because of this that their skeletons could be preserved in perfect condition. There was not a trace of injury on the skeletons. Those people were probably the ones who discovered the secret of the well before him. They wanted to explore the secret room and obtain the treasures, but they died silently here. Could this be a soul attack? It did not harm the physical body, but it made people die suddenly. Moreover, the dead people turned into ghosts. He could not help but suspect that this was a soul attack. Although he had never seen a soul attack before, he was almost 90% sure that the attack he suffered was a soul attack. This secret room might be more dangerous than I thought. Gray's expression was grave. A soul attack was almost impossible to guard against. Moreover, the most terrifying thing was that it only targeted the soul. The defense of the physical body was useless. No matter how strong the physical body was, if the soul was too weak, one would immediately die. Fortunately, he had reached the barbarian blood warrior realm. Under the nourishment of his realm, his soul was definitely stronger than an ordinary person's. This was why he was able to withstand that illusory soul attack. I wonder if the fox-type blood fiend that I met last time that could control ghosts knows a similar soul attack? He could not help but think of the fox-type blood fiend that he met in the forest that could control souls. He did not know if the fox-type blood fiend with a desolate level strength had a similar soul attack. If the Fox-type Blood Fiend had a similar soul attack, then he could be considered extremely lucky. If the Fox-type Blood Fiend had used a soul attack on him, he would have been able to avoid it at that time. Originally, he had thought of hunting the Fox-type Blood Fiend for a period of time. Although he was only a barbarian blood warrior, his combat strength had reached the Desolate level. He had even killed a Desolate level warrior before. Logically speaking, he should have the strength to kill the Fox-type Blood Fiend. But now that he thought about it, he felt that it was too risky. If the Fox-type Blood Fiend had a similar soul attack ability, his strong physical defense would not be of any use. After all, it was an attack that targeted the soul. Should I continue? Gray's expression was grave. The danger of this secret room had exceeded his expectations. He had only ventured deeper, and there were already such dangerous rune mechanisms. If he continued to venture deeper, would there be even more dangerous mechanisms? Could this castle really be a building from the Empire era? Such a dangerous mechanism, even compared to the last mechanism in the king's graveyard, would not be inferior. He could not help but suspect that this building was from the Empire era that was even more glorious than this one. Moreover, the identity of the owner was probably not simple. Even if it was during the Empire era, the person who could build such a secret room was definitely not a simple person. Let's explore further. If it doesn't work, I will immediately retreat. Gritting his teeth, Gray decided to move forward a little more. Although the formless soul attack was dangerous and impossible to defend against, with his barbarian blood warrior realm, he should be able to withstand it. Gray advanced cautiously. Every step he took was especially careful. After advancing for more than 10 meters, suddenly, another formless wave swept towards Gray. Gray could not help but clutch his head in pain. After standing still for a moment, Gray recovered and continued forward. After advancing for more than 20 meters, he encountered another formless soul attack. After advancing for more than 10 meters, he encountered another formless soul attack. After advancing for more than 30 meters, he encountered another formless soul attack. Gray had already suffered 4 formless soul attacks. The intense pain caused cold sweat to seep out of his forehead. He was a little hesitant as to whether he should continue forward. Ahead? After turning a corner, he suddenly discovered that it was no longer an empty tunnel. Instead, it was a room with a stone platform and other furnishings. Obviously, he was about to reach the secret room. The secret room was right in front of him. No matter what, he could not give up at this time. He gritted his teeth and continued forward. Chapter 4:16. After suffering another wave of soul attacks, Gray finally walked into the secret room. This was a secret room that was about 100 square meters in size. There were several stone tables in the room, and there were some bottles on each table. Some of them were crystal bottles with words engraved on them. Even though a long time had passed, the words were still clearly visible. Gray walked over and looked at them one by one. High-grade healing potion. The label on the first crystal bottle made Gray's eyes light up. High-grade healing potions were several times more potent than ordinary healing potions. They had extremely strong healing effects and were extremely precious. Even in auctions they were rarely seen. Only clans with master alchemists would have a small amount of them. Normally, they would not sell them. They would keep them for their own use or give them to their close allies. During the final battle with the Flame Kingdom, Sophia had fed Gray this healing potion when he was heavily injured. The effects were remarkable. Even though he was heavily injured after taking the healing potion, he had recovered some of his battle strength. He had joined forces with Sophia to injure the wild blood warriors of the Flame Kingdom. There was actually such a potion in this secret room. It could be imagined that the potions in this secret room would not be of low quality. He took the high-grade healing potion and looked at it. In the next moment, he could not help but be disappointed. The high-grade healing potion was empty. There was not a single drop of liquid in it. There was only a small dried stain at the bottom. Obviously, this high-grade healing potion had been wasted. The long time had caused its medicinal liquid to evaporate and disappear. Gray looked at the labels on the other bottles on the stone table. Inkstone potion, purple-red potion, tricolored potion. There were many types of potions on the stone table. Gray had not heard of most of the names of the potions. However, if they were placed together with high-grade healing potions, he could guess that the value of these potions would be extremely high. Unfortunately, these potions were the same as high-grade healing potions. The medicinal liquid had evaporated and did not have the slightest medicinal effect. Limb potion. Gray saw another type of potion. The name of this potion was not unfamiliar to Gray. He had once cut off the arm of Edgar, a direct descendant of the Wallen family. When he met Edgar in the palace, Edgar's arm had already been reattached, and his agility had not been affected much. It was said that the other party had paid a huge price to hire a royal potion master to refine an extremely precious magic potion to reattach that arm. If Gray's guess was right, the MP potion that the other party requested the royal potion master to refine should be this amputated limb potion. The amputated limb potion was not a potion that could regenerate a severed limb. Instead, the potion had an extremely strong healing effect. As long as the severed limb was pieced together and the potion was poured, the severed muscle tissue, nerve fibers, and so on could be reconnected. What a pity! This bottle didn't explode. Gray was originally lamenting the loss of another precious potion, but when he saw the contents of the crystal bottle, he couldn't help but be surprised. In the crystal bottle, there was more than half a bottle of green liquid. It was so green that it looked like the leaves of a plant. It should be because this bottle is sealed so well that this liquid can be preserved. However, so much time has passed. Is it still effective? Gray kept this bottle of amputated limb potion into his purple ring. Although he didn't know if it had any effect, he could use it to test it if he encountered such a situation in the future. He continued to look at the other potions, and saw many that he had never seen before. However, he didn't find any other potions with liquid. He looked at a stone table at the side. On the stone table, the number of crystal bottles piled up had decreased significantly, but the size was also much larger. It was at least 10 times the size of the crystal bottles from before. I can't see the words clearly. The words on these crystal bottles were not engraved, but pasted on in the form of labels. Too much time had passed, causing the words to be blurry. Many of them could not be seen clearly. And the situation in these bottles was basically the same as before. There was no longer any liquid in them. Ice Soul Tiger's blood. Finally, he saw a rather clear label. After careful examination, he recognized the words on it. The bottle probably contained the blood of a blood fiend like the Ice Soul Tiger. Gray had read about this type of blood fiend in a book before. This type of blood fiend was a desolate level blood fiend in the Hanhu sequence. This means that these containers should be used to contain the blood of blood fiends. The crystal containers on this stone table were all the same size and shape. They should all contain the same type of blood fiend. Hence, Gray guessed that these were all containers used to contain the blood of blood fiend. Dark Bug, Wild Bull, Wind Howling Leopard. Gray saw a few more bottles with clear labels. Without exception, they all had the type of blood fiend. These blood fiends were not of low levels. The lowest was at the barbarian level, while the highest was at the desolate level. Unlike before, he didn't find any well-sealed and well-preserved bottles. Gray looked at the other stone tables. He then found a few more stone platforms, each of which had a lot of crystal containers. They were either filled with magic potions or blood from blood fiends. However, both the potions and the blood had evaporated and dried up. Finally, he looked at the only stone table that he hadn't checked yet. On the last stone table, there were only 2 bottles. The size of the bottles was about the same as an ordinary magic potion bottle. However, they weren't made of crystal. Instead, they were made of a yellow metal. The label was directly engraved on the yellow metal bottles. Gray looked at the first yellow metal bottle. Storm Falcon's blood. When he saw the words on the yellow metal bottle, Gray's pupils suddenly shrank. Storm Falcon, a bird beast that soared in the sky. Wherever it passed, it would cause a storm. It was known as the representative of storms. Of course, the main reason why Gray's emotions changed so drastically was that this blood fiend was a king-level blood fiend. In other words, the yellow metal bottle contained king-level blood fiend blood. Needless to say, king-level blood fiends were extremely difficult to obtain. When Gray was lucky enough to come across a king-level blood fiend's blood at the Hobbs auction house in Mercenary City, he had spent a total of 1.42 million gold coins to buy one. Not to mention the high price, the most important thing was that it was almost impossible to come across a king-level blood fiend's blood at an auction house. The main reason he could come across it at the Hobbs auction house in Mercenary City was because the Mercenary King had just killed a king-level blood fiend. Under normal circumstances, it would be very difficult to come across such a blood fiend's blood at an auction house. It's not in a crystal bottle, but in a yellow metal bottle. Clearly, it's in consideration of long-term preservation. Will the blood be well preserved? Gray reached out and picked up the yellow metal bottle with the words Storm Falcon written on it. He shook it slightly. Immediately, the sound of liquid could be heard. Clearly, the blood within was still in a liquid state. He grabbed the bottle with one hand and pinched the cork with the other, twisting it forcefully. It took him less than half of his strength to twist the cork. It was obvious that the bottle was tightly sealed. Soon, the cork was unscrewed and removed. Immediately, a strong smell of blood wafted out. At the same time, there was a faint fragrance. It was as if the blood had been mixed with the essence of flowers and plants. It's not rotten. Having consumed a lot of blood fiend's blood over the years, Gray naturally had a certain level of judgment. He immediately determined that the blood in this bottle was not rotten. As for why it had the fragrance of flowers and plants, it was easy to understand. King-level blood fiends could be said to be full of treasures. Their flesh and blood were no different from concentrated potions to ordinary blood warriors. Naturally, their blood would have some characteristics similar to magic potions. Horned sheep's blood. Gray checked the blood in another metal bottle. This was the blood of a type of blood fiend called the horned sheep. Like the Storm Falcon, the blood was also perfectly preserved. However, Gray had never seen an introduction to this type of blood fiend in any book. However, it was not difficult to deduce some characteristics of the horned sheep from the Storm Falcon. If he was not mistaken, this horned sheep was very likely to be a king-level blood fiend. After all, it was placed together with the blood of the Storm Falcon and was also stored in an extremely precious metal. Could there be something even more precious hidden in the secret compartment? After checking all the stone tables, Gray began to knock on the entire room. Although the things placed in this room were already extremely precious, he still could not help but carefully inspect the entire room with a trace of hope. Perhaps there were even more precious things hidden in the secret compartment. Knock, knock, knock. Originally, it was just a precaution. However, unexpectedly, as Gray continued to knock, he actually heard a hollow sound in one of the walls. It was behind a square stone that was about 10 centimeters long. What exactly is it that needs to be hidden like this? Gray's eyes burned with a trace of passion. Something as precious as the blood of a king-level blood fiend was placed directly on the stone table. How precious could it be if it was hidden so carefully in the secret compartment? Gray took out a dagger from his purple ring and slowly poked at the gap in the square stone. The square stone was slowly pried out and finally fell to the ground with a clatter, revealing the space inside. Gray looked inside and could not help but be stunned. The space behind the stone was empty. There was nothing. Gray did not give up and looked inside. He found that there was something inside. Embedded in the innermost part was a metal plate with many complicated rune patterns. Chapter 4:17. The control hub of a rune mechanism? Gray hadn't come into contact with many rune items, but it wasn't few either. Noble families would more or less have some rune items, such as a drying room that allowed clothes to dry quickly, a rune lamp that illuminated the night, a furnace for warmth in winter, and so on. Whether it was the original Fergus castle or the newly built one, they all had rune mechanisms. Of course, they were the simplest rune mechanisms and didn't have the ability to attack. They could only switch on the rune lamps in the passageway or open the exit of an escape route. Ordinary runemasters could only do this much. If they wanted to have a certain amount of attack power, they would have to hire a runemaster. If they wanted to have a strong attack power, they would have to hire a master runemaster. The price was not cheap, and these things required connections. When the Fergus family built the castle, they didn't have the relevant connections. Therefore, after some consideration, the Fergus family decided to hire an ordinary runemaster. The metal plate in front of him seemed to be the control mechanism of a rune mechanism. Gray reached out to touch the metal plate and poured a trace of blood energy into one of the patterns on the metal plate. There was no reaction. The blood energy was like a stone sinking into the sea. There wasn't the slightest reaction. Gray wasn't discouraged. He poured his blood energy into another pattern. After changing more than 10 patterns, there was still no change. Just as Gray was about to give up. Buzz buzz. Suddenly, the space in the secret room trembled slightly. Gray saw that in the innermost part of the secret room, where there shouldn't have been any cracks, there was actually a 10-ton boulder rising. Finally, a strange door that allowed 2 people to pass through appeared. There's another secret room. Gray narrowed his eyes. Originally, he was curious as to why there was only one secret chamber in such a place protected by powerful mechanisms. It was truly abnormal. Now, it seemed that it was not that there were no other secret chambers. It was just that the entrances to these secret chambers were covered. Gray looked inside through the door. Behind the door was a huge room. The construction of the room was very exquisite. There were murals on the walls and rune lamps on the ceiling. Moreover, all of them had been lit up. There were white jade pillars and stone carvings all around. Gray walked in and looked around. The more he looked, the more he felt that this place didn't look like a secret room, but more like the hall of a castle. It's actually built to such a state. Could it be that someone once lived here for a long time? Gray was very curious. What kind of person would actually want to live in a dry well? Looking around the underground hall, he quickly discovered many rooms that were connected to the hall. Pushing open the almost rotten wooden door, he walked into a room on the left. This was a room similar to a conference room. The room was filled with tables and chairs, but all of them were rotten. They walked into a room on the right. It was a very large room with a kitchen counter, pots, and bowls. It was a kitchen. After walking for a while, another room appeared. Gray pushed the door open and walked in. Right in front of him was a huge bed. On the left and right sides of the room were several wardrobes. This should be a bedroom. After looking around the room for a while, Gray didn't find anything. He continued walking and saw another door. Although this door was made of wood like the other rooms, the wood seemed to be extremely special. Even after such a long time, it didn't show any signs of decay. It's actually using special wood as a door. What's inside? Gray was curious. He pushed the door open and walked in. What he saw was a room that wasn't too big. There were 2 rows of bookshelves in the room. On the bookshelves there were a few hundred books with leather covers. Not cleaned for a long time, the bookshelves and the books with leather covers were covered in dust. Gray walked over and carefully brushed away the dust on one of the books with a leather cover. He took out the book with a leather cover. Physical Ability. This was the title of the book. It seemed to be a book that introduced physical abilities. I don't know if the paper has decayed? Just from the name, Gray could tell that the value of this book must be quite high. After all, this was a book about physical abilities. Whether it was during the Empire or the Kingdom, books about this kind of content were extremely precious. He was a little worried that the paper of this book had decayed. He carefully opened the pages and then breathed a sigh of relief. The pages were seriously yellowed, but they didn't rust. Although the words recorded on them were a little dim, they were still legible. Obviously, these papers had been processed, and the special door outside had an extremely strong moisture isolation effect, which also prevented the decay of the paper to a certain extent. Gray looked at the other books. He found that among these books, some of the books had decayed because of the poor quality of the paper, and some of the books were similar to the paper of the physical ability book. They didn't decay because of this. Gray put the dozens of books that hadn't decayed into the purple ring with great care. After looking around for a while, he didn't find anything else. He left the room. In front of him, he had already reached the end of the room. However, at the end there was a corridor that was 2 or 3 meters wide. The corridor was more than 100 meters long. At the end there was a silver metal door. Even though so many years had passed, the door was still shining silver under the illumination of the light. There were no traces of decay. Gray lifted his foot and walked into the corridor. He had just taken a few steps inside. Whoosh! Suddenly, Gray only saw a green light flash in front of him. It was so fast that he didn't even have time to dodge. He only had time to metalize his body before he was hit by the green light. Then, his body flew out uncontrollably into the hall outside the corridor. Gray looked down at his chest. On his chest, the aristocratic clothes on his body were completely shattered, and under the clothes on his bronze skin a deep wound appeared. A large amount of dark red blood spilled out. He was seriously injured. Gray couldn't believe it. Even on the battlefield, it was difficult for the attacks of the desolate blood warriors to seriously injure him. However, he was seriously injured by the green light just now. The power of the green light, although not as destructive as the blood skills of a desolate blood warrior, was not far off. What a powerful rune mechanism! At that moment, Gray noticed that in addition to the green light, there were rune patterns flashing on the walls and floor of the entire corridor. Obviously, there was a rune mechanism in the corridor, and to be able to injure someone with such a strong defense like him in an instant, the rune mechanism was definitely powerful. The rune mechanism in front of him was even more powerful than the last rune mechanism in the Tomb of the Kings. If he really wanted to compare, its power was probably comparable to the large rune mechanism in the outermost periphery of the Tomb of the Kings. In such a narrow space, it's reasonable to say that it shouldn't be able to create such a powerful rune mechanism. Enduring the pain, Gray looked inside the corridor and immediately understood why there was such a powerful rune mechanism. The walls, ceiling, and floor of the corridor were all made of a purple jade-like material, and this material was the top rune material, purple gold ore. It was extremely extravagant to use purple gold ore to create a rune mechanism. No wonder it was so powerful. The rune mechanism is protected by purple gold ore, and the door is made of silver metal. Even after such a long time, it still hasn't decayed. What exactly is in this room? Gray looked at the silver metal door in the depth. Something that could be protected by such a powerful rune mechanism must be extremely precious. I'm afraid this is the real secret room. The secret room outside is just a cover. Obviously, the most precious thing was behind the silver metal door. The secret room outside was just a fake one to cover up the existence of this secret room. The fake secret room contained the blood of king-level blood fiends. Gray couldn't imagine what the real secret room would contain. Even if there was a silver-level magic weapon, Gray wouldn't doubt it. With my strength, it's impossible for me to get close to the silver metal door. Staring at the silver metal door, Gray's eyes flickered. In the end, he shook his head helplessly. Even if my strength reaches the second level of the barbarian realm, I'm afraid I can't do it. Just the attacks from the outermost area were already so powerful. Gray estimated that the rune mechanism in the depths of the corridor would be even more powerful. I'll know when I try. Gray took out a battle axe. It was a bronze-level magic weapon, but its quality was only average among the bronze level. It was one of his spoils of war from the battlefield. Using the metal ability, Gray controlled the battle axe and quickly flew inside. What followed next was a shocking scene. Swish, swish, swish. Streaks of green light appeared one after another and hacked at the battle axe. The battle axe was sent flying everywhere. It first hit the ground, then bounced up and hit the wall on the side with great difficulty. He controlled its trajectory and made it move deeper into the corridor. The deeper the battle axe went, the denser the green light became, and the color became darker. Clang! The metal handle of the battle axe actually broke under the attack. Gray continued to control the two halves of the battle axe to fly inside. Clang, clang. In the end, the battle axe was cut into countless small metal pieces and scattered all over the ground. A bronze-level magic weapon was broken just like that. Gray felt a chill run down his spine. No matter how strong his defense was, it couldn't be compared to a bronze-level magic weapon. Even a bronze-level magic weapon was cut into pieces, let alone him. It should be very difficult for a second-level desolate-level existence to break through. Only a third-level desolate-level existence has a chance. To have absolute confidence, I'm afraid only a king-level existence can do it. Chapter 4:18. With my 3 mixed blood beast abilities, I'll need to reach the level of a desolate blood warrior before I can break through. The 3 mixed blood beast abilities allowed Gray to fight someone 2 levels above him. When he was at the first level of the barbarian level, he could fight on par with the first level of the desolate level. When he reached the first level of the desolate level, he could fight on par with the third level of the desolate level. With the combat power of the third level of the desolate level, he should be able to break through. Of course, it was only a possibility. If he wanted to be absolutely sure, he would need to increase his strength to the level of a king warrior. A king warrior? Gray raised his eyebrows. According to his estimation, if he wanted to be as strong as a king-class warrior, he would have to reach at least the second level of the desolate grade. This would take at least years. Should I cooperate with the royal family? If he told the royal family about the existence of this secret room, the royal family would be happy to send a king-level expert to investigate. However, if he cooperated with the royal family, the most important thing in this secret room would be taken away by the royal family. Although he had a good relationship with Sophia and Francis Violet, when it came to such great benefits, it was impossible for them to give in. It should be said that they couldn't make the decision. After all, they weren't the ones in charge of the royal family. It's not worth it to cooperate with the royal family. I'll come back when I'm strong enough. In the end, Gray decided not to cooperate with the royal family. He would come back when he was strong enough. The thing was here and would not run away. It was not worth it to give away the most valuable thing in the secret chamber just to get it as soon as possible. Through the control hub, he closed the door and returned everything to its original position. Gray went back the way he came and left the dry well. He found a place with dense vegetation on the island and treated his injuries. Gray returned to his bedroom silently. In the next few days, Gray sometimes accompanied Sarah, Polly, and the others to various places in the territory to enjoy the scenery. Sometimes, he read the dozens of books he took out from the secret chamber in the dry well. According to Gray's estimation, the secret room was probably a secret room from the Empire. The books in it were naturally very valuable. Each book might be unique, and it was almost impossible to find the same book. After all, there were too many things buried in the history of the Empire. Even until now, the exact reason for the Empire's destruction was still unclear. There are actually so many classifications for physical abilities. Flipping open the book on physical abilities, Gray felt as if he had opened the door to a whole new world. All kinds of physical abilities that he had never seen before appeared one after another. Other than the 3 most common categories of strength, speed, and defense, there were many other categories of physical abilities. For example, a blood fiend with this kind of physical ability would be able to hear movements from dozens of miles away. It would have an extremely strong ability to seek good fortune and avoid harm. It would be almost impossible to capture it. For example, a blood fiend with this kind of physical ability could even track someone from 1,000 miles away. As long as someone was targeted by a blood fiend, it would be difficult to escape even if the person fled to the ends of the earth. For example, a blood fiend with this kind of physical ability could even regrow a severed limb. A blood fiend with an extremely high level of physical ability could be revived as long as there was still a piece of flesh in its body. For example, a blood fiend with this kind of physical ability could shoot a terrifying beam of light from its eyes. This beam of light had an extremely strong penetrative ability, and there was almost nothing it could not destroy. There were many types of physical abilities, and there were even more types than elemental abilities. It was just that there were many of them, and it was very rare to encounter them. This was why people had the misconception that there were very few types of physical abilities. Gray continued to flip through the book. When he flipped to a page of content, a look of realization appeared on his face. So this type of blood fiend is called the amethyst beast. The characteristics of a type of blood fiend called the amethyst beast that was described in the book were exactly the same as the purple blood fiend that he had hunted previously. He was almost certain that the purple blood fiend was this amethyst beast. This was a type of blood fiend that belonged to the crystal beast category. Every level of blood fiend had a different color on the surface of its body. The murderous level blood fiends had a white surface that resembled a white crystal. They were called the white crystal beasts. The violent level blood fiends had a yellow surface that resembled a yellow crystal. Hence, they were called the yellow crystal beasts. He continued to flip through the book. After flipping through dozens of pages, he flipped to the end of the book, and a word leaped into his eyes. Horned sheep. Gray naturally had a deep impression of this word. This was because he had obtained 2 bottles of suspected king-level blood fiend's blood. One of the blood fiends was called the horned sheep. He could not help but carefully read the introduction of the horned sheep. It really is a king-level blood fiend. The introduction on the first line confirmed Gray's guess. The horned sheep was indeed a king-level blood fiend, just like the storm falcon. It was stored on the same stone platform as the blood of the storm falcon, and it was also stored with the same metal material. The blood in the other bottle was indeed that of a king-level blood fiend. It's actually a physical type blood fiend. He continued to read and soon became surprised. This type of blood fiend was actually a pure physical type blood fiend. Although Gray could guess from the amethyst beast that there must be a pure physical type of king-level blood fiend, he really did not expect to learn about one so quickly. Moreover, he actually had the blood of this type of blood fiend. He continued to read. According to the introduction in the book, this type of blood fiend could be ranked among the top blood fiends of the same level in terms of strength, speed, and defense. Its speed, strength, and defense could be ranked among the top blood fiends of the same level. It was considered quite powerful. However, it was obviously unable to compete with a king-level blood fiend of the same level. After all, the power of a king-level blood fiend could reach a special level. Its physical ability is actually its hair. Gray continued to read and was even more surprised. The most basic physical ability of this type of blood fiend was its hair. This type of blood fiend could control the growth of its hair and use it as a weapon and a means of defense. Moreover, this type of hair was extremely tough. If a king-level blood fiend of the same level was bound by this type of hair, it would be difficult for it to break free. The only drawback was that this type of hair had a poor resistance to fire abilities. When faced with such an ability, it would become quite fragile. However, this fragility was only equivalent to that of a king-level blood fiend of the same level. If it was a desolate-level blood fiend, it would be very difficult to break this type of hair with its fire ability. Such a physical ability actually exists. Gray couldn't help but sigh. Physical abilities were really strange. Even an ability like the hair ability existed. It was simply too strange. Moreover, the hair ability was classified as a physical ability, which was also a rather strange classification. However, when he thought about it carefully, hair was after all a part of the body. It was understandable that it was classified as a physical ability. It's inexplicably funny. He just happened to have a portion of the blood of this type of magical hair beast. If he wanted to have this ability, he could have it. When he thought about his long hair fluttering in the wind and thunderbolts striking his enemies, he felt awkward. Such an ability was more suitable for women. Of course, the ability did not matter if it looked good or not. The key was whether it was powerful and suitable for him. If he needed such an ability in the future, he would not hesitate to consume the blood of this type of blood fiend. Compared to his external appearance, his own strength was the most fundamental. After staying in the Half Moon Hill for a few days, Gray and the rest returned to Fergus Castle. In the following 2 months, Gray flipped through the dozens of books. He read them carefully and spent a full 2 months before he finished reading all the books. The harvest was huge. From the books, he learned a lot about the prosperity of the empire, about the types of blood fiends, and also about the classification of physical, elemental, and spiritual abilities. Among them, Gray felt that the type of blood fiend would be the most helpful to him. For him, who could consume the blood of blood fiends and obtain the ability to transform, understanding the blood fiends was obviously very important. After all, only by knowing the blood fiends could he choose the blood fiends that were most suitable for him to consume. In 2 months, Gray had reached the critical point between the first and second level of the barbarian level. Once he broke through and reached the second level of the barbarian level, with the terrifying increase in the power of his 3 mixed abilities, he estimated that he would immediately possess the destructive power of the second level of the desolate level. At that time, he would definitely become an extremely powerful existence in the desolate level. On the battlefield, according to Gray's observation, regardless of whether it was the Purple Moon Kingdom or the Flame Kingdom, most of the desolate level existences were at the first level of the desolate level. There were very few who had reached the second level of the desolate level, and even fewer who were at the third level of the desolate level. Therefore, once his combat power reached the second level of the desolate level, he would immediately become one of the best in the desolate level. One day, a messenger bird flew into the Fergus family's castle. It brought an envelope with the purple moon symbol on it. It was addressed to Gray. Gray opened the envelope and read the content. The letter mentioned that the young generation of the Jewel Kingdom was about to begin. He was summoned to the Imperial City, and then they would go to the Jewel Kingdom together. Is this considered going abroad? Gray's lips curled up slightly. In his previous life, although the transportation system was extremely advanced, he had never gone abroad. In this life, the transportation system was rather backward, but he was about to go abroad. He could not help but look forward to it. He was looking forward to going abroad, and even more so to fighting with the young generation of the other 2 kingdoms. Fighting was the best catalyst for increasing one's strength. After leaving the battlefield for 2 months, he could clearly feel that the speed of his improvement was much slower than on the battlefield. This exchange was an opportunity. Perhaps he could quickly break through his current level and reach the second level of the barbarian level through fighting with the young generation of the other 2 kingdoms. Chapter 419. 2 days later, Gray and Zaloyang arrived at the royal city. Although Gray was already a marquis due to the upheaval in his family, he was still a young man. Zaloyang was also one of the people summoned by the royal family. Originally, it would have taken more than 10 days to travel from Fergus to the royal city by carriage. However, with the use of the barbaric-level blood fiends, it only took them 2 days to reach the royal city. They stayed in the residence arranged by the royal family. In the following days, Gray saw the most outstanding members of the aristocratic families arriving one after another. For example, there was Elijah and Samantha from the Duke family of Addison, who had extremely unique green hair. There was also Gavin Kenneth from the Kenneth family and a young lady from the Kenneth family. This lady had also been on the battlefield. Although her performance was not as outstanding as Gray and the rest, she was still highly regarded. For example, there was Jessica from the Cumberland Marquis family. Of course, there was also Warner Nahum and Nathan Naeem from the Nahum family, as well as Edgar from the Wallen family. As the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the Marquis family, they were naturally within the scope of recruitment. In the end, all the members of the 3rd Duke and 8th Marquis arrived. Gray, the members of the 3rd Duke and 8th Marquis families added up to a total of 15 people. It could be said that they had gathered the most talented members of the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom apart from the royal family. The day of departure arrived. Gray and the rest went to meet up with the members of the royal family. Several huge carriages with the Purple Moon Kingdom's emblem appeared in front of them. Each carriage was larger and more luxurious than an ordinary one. The carriage at the front did not have wheels. Instead, it was mounted on the back of a huge, 9-meter-long barbaric level blood fiend. It was as if the barbaric level blood fiend was carrying an exquisite pavilion on its back. Only the royal family could be so extravagant as to use a barbaric level blood fiend as a means of transportation. Even the Duke's family would be reluctant to do so. After all, any barbaric level fighting force was extremely precious. It would be too late to use it to suppress important resource areas. Why would it be wasted in such a place? Although the carriages at the back were not as extravagant as the one at the front, they were still of high quality, and were all pulled by barbarian-level blood fiends. Gray and the others saw the members of the royal family next to the carriage that was driven by a desolate level blood beast. Francis the Violet, Hilya the Violet, Sophia, and 2 other members of the royal family were the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family who would be heading there this time. However, what attracted the crowd's attention the most was not the 5 of them. Instead, it was the man who was walking in the middle of the group accompanied by the 5 of them. This was a man with a handsome face, but his hair was already white. Seeing this man, Gray's heart suddenly jumped. He had seen this man before. He's a member of the royal family. When he had used the forbidden artifact to defeat the Wallen family's formation puppets and was prepared to kill the Wallen family, it was this man who had appeared without anyone noticing and stopped him from killing them. At that time, he was already guessing the other party's identity. But now, he was sure that the other party was a member of the royal family. This lord is actually leading the way this time. Not far from Gray was Gavin Kenneth. As a member of the Duke's family, he obviously knew this man. "Who is this lord?" Gray asked in a low voice. "Lord Fitch the Violet. He is the uncle of His Majesty and is also a king-level master." King-level master? Gray narrowed his eyes. His initial guess was right. The other party was indeed a king-level master. However, he did not know if the other party had appeared at the place where he had fought the Wallen family. Was it a coincidence, or had he deliberately appeared there for some reason? He felt that the latter was more likely. This lord is extremely talented, even among the king-level masters of the royal family. He became a king-level master 30 years ago, and he was only 40 years old at that time, Gavin Kenneth continued. There was awe in his eyes, not only because the other party was a member of the royal family, but also because the other party had become a king-level master at such a young age. A king-level master at 40 years old? Gray's face was full of surprise. He had read many historical books related to king-level masters, and he had even read some biographies about king-level masters. Most of the king-level masters became king-level masters after the age of 60, and some were even over 100 years old. For someone like the other party to become a king-level master at the age of 40, he could be considered extremely young. It's a pity that this lord was born in the wrong era. If he had been born during the Empire, he could have broken through the king level and reach the magic light level, which is above the king level. Gavin Kenneth said with slight regret. After meeting up with the royal family, the group set off. The royal family sat in the carriage at the front, while Gray and the rest sat in the carriages at the back. Sitting in the same carriage as Gray were Zeloyan, Jessia, Gavin Kenneth, and the young woman from the Kenneth family. She was a rather beautiful woman with extremely fair skin and a slender figure. Her eyebrows were very straight, and she exuded a heroic aura. Like Gavin Kenneth, she had blue hair. According to Gavin Kenneth's introduction, the woman's name was Daniela Kenneth. She was the daughter of one of Gavin Kenneth's uncles. You must have participated in the Three Kingdoms Youth Exchange before, right? Gray asked Gavin Kenneth, Zeloyan, and the others. Yes, we did once. That was 5 years ago. Zeloyan nodded. The Crimson Kingdom held the exchange at that time. The Crimson Kingdom? I heard that most of the people in this kingdom practice the bird-beast blood technique, and many of them can fly. Is that true? Yes, almost half of the people in this kingdom practice the bird-beast blood technique. Once a battle starts, they immediately use their advantage in the air. It's very difficult to deal with them. Gavin Kenneth continued. Their flying ability is really too difficult to deal with. Almost every battle with them is a bitter struggle. Especially the Crimson Kingdom's prince, Lars Austin. The blood art he cultivates isn't just the bird-beast blood art. His speed is also extremely fast. He challenged several of us in a row, making us suffer greatly. In the end, it was His Highness Francis who took action to stop him. The first prince of the Crimson Kingdom? This one should be the strongest person in the Crimson Kingdom's younger generation. His talent is terrifying, and definitely not below His Highness Francis. Zeloyan said. The blood technique he practices is somewhat similar to Her Highness Sophia's. His speed is extremely fast. Those who are weaker would have been defeated by him before they could even react. Extremely fast, huh? It's indeed very troublesome. Gray nodded. He could already imagine the opponent. During the battle, he couldn't even catch a glimpse of the opponent's figure and was like a headless fly. Facing such an opponent was indeed a headache. What about the Jewel Kingdom? Among the younger generation of the Jewel Kingdom, who is the strongest? If no one surpasses her, it should be the Jewel Kingdom's princess. Jessie said. The princess's blood technique can turn her body into a hard gemstone. Her defense is extremely terrifying. Compared to the first prince of the Crimson Kingdom, she can be said to be the polar opposite. The two of them have fought before, and the final result was a draw. Neither could do anything to the other. Speaking of which, the princess's fighting style is quite similar to yours. Gavin Kenneth said. When the time comes, if the two of you fight, it should be very interesting. In a dazzling palace, a man sat on a huge throne that looked like a golden flame. This was a man who looked like a middle-aged man. His eyes were extremely sharp, like a wolf looking at an eagle. They could see straight into one's heart, and no one dared to look him in the eye. He was the current king of the Flame Kingdom, Modi Blaze. Although he was over 60 years old, he still maintained the appearance of a middle-aged man because he had become a king-level expert very early. Father, send out the royal family's Blaze Fong. Big Brother's death cannot be in vain. In the hall, there was a young man with blonde hair. He was dressed in blue all his life. He was tall and slender, and his face was handsome. However, at this time, his face flashed with hatred, which destroyed his handsome image that could charm thousands of girls. And this Grey Fergus's talent is extremely terrifying. If he continues to grow, he will inevitably become a big trouble for the Flame Kingdom in the future. On the throne, the king of the Flame Kingdom, Modi Blaze, did not immediately answer. He tapped his fingers lightly on the armrest of the throne, as if he was considering Niklos Blaze's proposal. Clap, clap, clap. At this moment, a man in the uniform of a palace guard quickly walked in with an envelope in his hand. He stopped some distance away from the king of the Kingdom of Flames, Modi Inferno, and spoke. Your Majesty, there is news from the Jewel Kingdom's spies. Bring it up. The king of the Flame Kingdom, Modi Blaze, said indifferently. The latter hurried forward and handed the letter to Modi Blaze. Modi Blaze opened the letter. After reading it for a moment, he looked at Niklos Blaze and said, The exchange between the younger generation of the Purple Moon, Scarlet, and Jewel Kingdoms has begun. Exchange? That's great, Father. This is a chance to kill the future experts of the three kingdoms. Niklos Blaze's eyes flashed with cold killing intent as he spoke. To be able to be sent to participate in the exchange, they must be the most outstanding disciples of the three kingdoms. If we can take this opportunity to kill the most outstanding disciples of the three kingdoms' younger generation, we will definitely be able to create a gap in the future experts of the three kingdoms. He believed that Grey Fergus, who killed his elder brother, must be among these people. This was a chance to avenge his elder brother and cause a gap in the future strength of the three kingdoms. The king of the Flame Kingdom, Modi Blaze, pondered for a moment, then raised his head and said, For such an important exchange, the three kingdoms must be on guard. That's right. It is indeed time to make a move on the spies we planted. If we can cause a gap in the future strength of the three kingdoms, it will be worth it even if we are exposed. Chapter 420. The Blood Fiends used to pull the carriages from the Purple Moon Kingdom to the Jewel Kingdom were at least at the barbaric level, so their speed was naturally extremely fast. In just 3 days, the Purple Moon Kingdom's team had already left the Purple Moon Kingdom, passed through the Jewel Kingdom's defense line at the border, and entered the Jewel Kingdom's territory. The Jewel Kingdom was a mountainous kingdom, so there was not much arable land. Almost every year, they would purchase food from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Crimson Kingdom. However, it was precisely because of this mountainous terrain that this kingdom was rich in gemstones. If one were to ask which of the Purple Moon Kingdom, the Scarlet Kingdom, and the Gem Kingdom was the wealthiest, then the Gem Kingdom would definitely be the one. A large number of precious gemstones could be used as rune materials, so this kingdom's wealth was extremely shocking, making it the wealthiest of the three kingdoms. After traveling for another 3 days in the Jewel Kingdom's territory, the Purple Moon Kingdom's team arrived at the Jewel Kingdom's royal city. This was a huge city with a hexagonal shape. The city walls and many other places were inlaid with gemstones. From afar, it looked like a huge, colorful gemstone. Welcome to the Purple Moon Kingdom. Under the warm welcome of the Jewel Kingdom, Grey and his team entered the palace and met with the current king of the Jewel Kingdom, Oroko Austin. This was a majestic man with a gemstone crown on his head and a gemstone inlaid golden robe. He held a gemstone scepter in his hand, and his entire person exuded an aura of nobility that could not be offended. Judging from his age, he should be a middle-aged man. However, the truth was that the king of the Jewel Kingdom was already in his early 60s. The reason why he looked so young should have a lot to do with his strength. If he was not mistaken, he should be a king-level powerhouse like the king of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Being able to become the king of a country meant that the other party's potential was at the top of their peers in the royal family. In addition, the royal family had a terrifying and almost endless supply of precious resources. For an ordinary family, it was difficult to become a king-level expert, but for people like them, it was not too difficult. Behind the king of the Jewel Kingdom, there were 2 men and 1 woman. One of the men seemed to be over 30 years old, while the woman and the other man seemed to be in their early 20s. That's the Gem Queen, Glenwy Austin, Zara whispered to Grey. Grey looked at the woman. She was a very tall and beautiful woman. Her legs were very long, and under the knee-length dress, she looked extremely slender and graceful. The woman had long black hair. Her skin was extremely delicate and lustrous like a gemstone. She had a high nose bridge and rosy lip. Her facial features were extremely delicate. There was a red diamond-shaped gemstone between her eyebrows, making one's gaze involuntarily fall on her smooth, jade-like forehead. After a brief meeting, Gray and the others were arranged to stay in one of the courtyards in the Jewel Kingdom's palace. They learned from the Jewel Kingdom that the people from the Scarlet Kingdom had arrived before them. That night, the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom would host a grand banquet for the two countries' visit. It was noon. After lunch, while Gray was thinking about how to arrange the time, Francis and Sophia arrived together. "Didn't you want to experience stone gambling? Let's go," Francis said with a smile. Gray and the other two left the palace in a carriage provided by the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom and appeared on the streets of the Jewel Kingdom. The streets were very wide, enough for 4 carriages to pass through. The shops on both sides of the streets were very busy, and people could be seen going in and out from time to time. Among these shops, there were often many shops with stones placed in them. That was a stone gambling den. Obviously, as described in the books that Gray had read before, stone gambling dens were very common in the Jewel Kingdom. The carriage finally stopped in front of a 3-story building. It was also a stone gambling den, but the size was bigger than the one they had seen before. Gray and the other two walked down from the carriage and walked into the stone gambling den. In the huge space, it was very lively. There were many people, and judging from their clothes, they were either rich or respectable. These people passed by one stone table after another, looking at the raw stones placed on the stone tables. Sometimes they nodded and immediately paid for it. Other times, they shook their heads and walked to other stone tables. Some places were surrounded by a group of people. It seemed that someone was cutting stones on the spot, which attracted the attention of these people. "It's good, it's good." Not far away, a group of people suddenly exclaimed. It seemed that something good had been cut out. Gray and the other two walked over and squeezed into the crowd with their strength. They entered the innermost part of the crowd and saw a stone about the size of a winter melon being slowly cut open, revealing a pink color. "We've made a profit, we've definitely made a profit. It's only 3 gold coins, and we've got a pink gem. We've definitely made a big profit. What good luck, we've actually cut out a top-grade rune material, a pink gem." Many people were talking about it, and next to this stone, a young man was full of excitement, nervously watching the stone-cutting master cut the stone. Finally, a pink gem about the size of an adult's fist appeared in front of everyone's eyes, and the young man carefully held it in his hand. "Such a big piece, I'm afraid it's worth more than 1,000 gold coins. I'll pay 1,000 gold coins, sell this redwood stone to me. I'll pay 1,100 gold coins. 1,200 gold coins." In the end, the pink gem was bought by a middle-aged man in exquisite clothes, and the crowd dispersed. "Want to give it a try?" Francis asked with a smile. "Sure, let's see who has better luck." Sophia smiled faintly. She was very interested. Naturally, Gray was also quite interested. Of course, this kind of interest was not because he wanted to make a fortune, but because he wanted to enjoy the process of stone gambling. After all, with his current wealth, even if he cut out the most precious gem, it would be difficult for his mood to fluctuate too much. In the end, the 3 of them each chose a raw stone and let the stone-cutting master cut it open on the spot. Gray and Francis did not cut out anything, but Sophia cut out a small piece of greenwood stone the size of a ping-pong ball, worth about 100 or 200 gold coins, and was in a very good mood. "Your Highness Francis, Your Highness Sophia, I went to look for you before, but found that you weren't here. So you're here." Following the voice, several young men and women walked over, led by a young man with red hair. The young man was very elegant, and his red hair was like a burning flame, extremely dazzling. Under the burning hair was a pair of sword-like eyebrows. His eyebrows were like swords, adding a bit of masculinity to his excessively handsome appearance. "Your Highness Lars, why are you here?" Seeing the newcomer, Francis was slightly surprised and nodded at him. "I came with my companions to broaden my horizons." Lars Crimson explained with a smile, then turned his gaze to Sophia. Your Highness Sophia, long time no see. Your Highness Lars. Sophia nodded and greeted him. This is? Lars Scarlet looked at Grey beside Francis and Sophia and asked. This is Grey Fergus, a friend of ours. Francis introduced both parties. Grey, this is His Highness Lars from the Scarlet Kingdom. Grey nodded and greeted him. For some reason, Grey faintly felt that after knowing his name, the other party seemed to have some hostility towards him. This made him feel rather strange. Logically speaking, this was the first time he met the other party, and they had never interacted before, so the other party shouldn't have any hostility towards him. Grey almost thought that he had sensed wrongly, but in fact, he didn't. Because when the two parties met and everyone chose a raw stone to try their luck, the other party came looking for him. Your Highness Grey, do you want to make a bet with me? Lars Austin's handsome face and dazzling red hair attracted the gazes of many young ladies in the hall. He looked at Grey and smiled. No need. Grey glanced at Lars Scarlet and rejected. It seemed that the other party was indeed hostile towards him, but he didn't know where this hostility came from. It's just a casual bet, it's fine even if there's no stakes. Lars Scarlet's smile didn't change. No need. If your Highness Lars is interested, why don't you gamble with the others? Grey still rejected. Not to mention that he didn't know anything about stone gambling, even if he did, he wouldn't agree. The best way to deal with this kind of inexplicable provocation was to ignore it. Seeing Grey reject twice in a row, the few young men who came with Lars Scarlet couldn't help but frown. Their gazes towards Grey were cold. One of the young men with fair skin said with dissatisfaction. What do you mean? His Highness Lars extended an invitation to you, and you actually rejected it? Are you looking down on His Highness Lars? Not accepting the stone gambling invitation means that you're looking down on him. Isn't your logic a little abnormal? Grey's expression couldn't help but turn cold. He had developed hostility towards him for no reason. Although the other party was a prince of a kingdom, he wasn't afraid. This was the Jewel Kingdom, not the Scarlet Kingdom that the other party controlled. It definitely wasn't a place where the other party could do as he pleased. Moreover, as a noble of the Purple Moon Kingdom, he wasn't under the other party's jurisdiction. The other party couldn't possibly run into the Purple Moon Kingdom to attack him, so he naturally had nothing to fear. All right, it's just our first meeting, and I'm rather interested in your Highness Grey. Since your Highness Grey isn't willing to gamble, then forget it. A cold glint flashed through the depths of Lars Austin's eyes, but his expression didn't change. He waved his hand and stopped the argument. Your Highness Lars wants to gamble, right? Then let me accompany you. Francis also issued an invitation at the right time, dissolving the tense atmosphere between both parties. Chapter 421. In the evening, a banquet was held in the palace. Most of the participants were youths. This was a gathering of the most outstanding youths of the three kingdoms. In this gathering, the most eye-catching person was not Prince Lars of the Scarlet Kingdom, nor was it Prince Francis of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Instead, it was the group of ladies. Sophia wore a long dress adorned with purple gems. Her face was beautiful, and her figure was slender and graceful. Her perfect figure was perfect. Her purple hair was dazzling and eye-catching under the light, making it hard for people to look at her directly. It was like a purple flower in a halo. The Gem Queen wore a long dress adorned with blue gems. Her black hair was like black silk, and it shone brightly with the red diamond-shaped gem between her eyebrows. A pair of snow-white and slender legs were exposed from her knees, showing off her slender figure. Jessia had a high nose bridge and rosy lip. Because she had been groomed to be the heir of a noble title, she had a valiant aura that was different from ordinary women. Not only did this not make people dislike her, it made her even more attractive. She was wearing a tight-fitting white dress that perfectly revealed her curvaceous body. The Scarlet Kingdom's princess, Kylie Scarlet, had long red hair like fire. Her facial features were exquisite, and her snow-white neck was as white as jade. Every frown and smile of hers had an indescribable charm. The young women all had different postures, but all of them were extremely attractive. At this banquet, they became the undisputed focus of attention. Gray was dressed in a black suit that matched his elegant black hair. He held a crystal goblet half filled with red wine and stood calmly in the middle of the banquet. He once again felt the inexplicable hostility from the Scarlet Kingdom's prince, Lars Scarlet. This time, it was not just Lars Scarlet. Even the other youths of the Scarlet Kingdom showed obvious hostility towards him. Obviously, the incident at the stone gambling den this afternoon had spread, and the other youths of the Scarlet Kingdom were also full of hostility towards him. He was a little baffled. He really did not understand why Lars Scarlet was hostile towards him. You feel a little baffled? Francis walked over and clinked glasses with Gray before asking with a smile. Indeed, a little. Gray smiled bitterly. He had many enemies, not only in the Purple Moon Kingdom, but also in the entire Flame Kingdom. He no longer cared about having another enemy. No matter how strong the enemy was, could they be stronger than the Flame Kingdom? However, he was a little baffled. This was clearly the first time they had met, so why was the other party so hostile towards him? If you knew what happened at the Three Kingdoms Exchange Conference 5 years ago, you wouldn't find it strange. Francis smiled. What happened at the Three Kingdoms Exchange Conference 5 years ago? Gray looked at Francis in confusion. The latter didn't deliberately keep Gray in suspense. 5 years ago, at the Three Kingdoms Exchange Conference, Lars seemed to have fallen in love with Sophia at first sight. Not long after the conference, the Scarlet Kingdom proposed a marriage alliance to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. However, it was rejected by father because she was too young. However, Lars Scarlet didn't seem to have given up. He would make a trip to the Purple Moon Kingdom almost every year. As you are Sophia's best friend, there would naturally be rumors that would reach his ears. At this point, Francis glanced at Gray, patted Gray's shoulder, and left with a faint smile on his face, leaving Gray alone with a frown. Francis had made it so clear that it was impossible for him not to understand. Obviously, the reason why Lars Scarlet was hostile towards him was because he was too close to Sophia. He couldn't help but seriously reflect on his relationship with Sophia. His relationship with Sophia was hard to say. They were definitely not lovers, but it would be inaccurate to say that they were just ordinary friends. They had known each other for several years. They had gone from strangers to familiar with each other, especially on the battlefield. They had interacted for half a year, and their relationship had become very special. They were more than friends, but not yet lovers. They had gotten used to each other's existence, and this habit had created a tacit understanding between them. And this tacit understanding was most directly reflected in the final battle with the Flame Kingdom, when he and Sophia had joined hands to fight against the desolate Blood Warriors. Although they didn't say a word, they could understand each other's intentions and thoughts, and their tacit understanding was seamless. "What are you thinking about?" A clear and melodious voice sounded beside his ear. Gray raised his head and looked over, only to see Sophia appear not too far away from him. A pair of beautiful eyes were looking at him. "I'm thinking if I invite you to dance. Will you agree?" Gray smiled. After sorting out all these, he had a clear understanding of his own heart. Sophia rolled her eyes and extended her slender, jade-like hand. Gray stepped forward gracefully, gently grasping her slender hand, and led her to the stage in the center of the banquet hall. Accompanied by the music, they danced lightly. The woman was absolutely beautiful, and the man's hair was as black as ink, his features distinct. Many people looked over in surprise, and they became the focus of the banquet hall. In a corner of the banquet hall, seeing the two dancing lightly on the stage, Jaisha's eyes dimmed. In another corner of the banquet hall, Zero looked at this scene and thought of his sister in the Purple Moon Kingdom. He couldn't help but sigh. Not far from the stage, Francis, who had been paying attention, smiled. On the other side of the stage, Lars Scarlet had a smile on his face, but the wine in his hand spilled slightly, revealing his extremely bad mood. Just now, he had invited Sophia to dance, but she had rejected him because she wasn't feeling well. Now, she was dancing on the stage with a noble from the Purple Moon Kingdom called Grey Fergus. It went without saying what this meant. Are you really that infatuated with her? Looking at her elder brother who had lost his composure, who Kylie Scarlet was slightly dissatisfied. She knew that her elder brother would make a trip to the Purple Moon Kingdom every year for her. But even so, he hadn't won her favor. Now, it seemed that she wasn't interested in her elder brother. Instead, she was interested in that noble from the Purple Moon Kingdom called Grey Fergus. She could not help but feel a little dissatisfied with this elder brother of hers. With his talent and his status as the successor of the Crimson Kingdom, he could have any woman he wanted. Why did he have to keep staring at someone who obviously did not like him? You don't understand. This is Father's decision. Taking a deep breath, Lars Scarlet forced himself to calm down and said in a deep voice. Indeed, he was captivated by her beauty, but for him to be so infatuated with her for 5 years, there must be a deeper reason. Father's decision? Who Kylie Scarlet's face showed surprise as she asked in shock. Father asked you to pursue her? Why? It's not time for you to know. Lars Scarlet shook his head and looked at Grey on the stage, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Sophia had a secret that could move the Scarlet Kingdom's royal family. Anyone who stood in her way was an enemy of the Scarlet Kingdom. The next day, the most outstanding members of the younger generation of the Three Kingdoms gathered. However, the Three Kingdoms exchange didn't start immediately. Instead, under the arrangement of the Jewel Kingdom, everyone boarded a carriage and left the palace. They left the capital of the Jewel Kingdom and came to a valley 100 miles away from the capital. The valley was filled with lush greenery and was full of vitality. There were springs, streams, and all kinds of animals. It was a harmonious scene. In the center of the valley, a huge castle stood. It was a castle built with green stone. The walls were green, and so were the palaces and minarets inside. When they saw it, it was as if they had seen the legendary residence of the elves. The carriage drove straight into the castle. The younger generation of the Three Kingdoms, along with the people from the Three Kingdoms, walked down from the carriage and curiously looked at the environment in front of them. What entered their eyes was a sea of green. Grey and the others, who were used to seeing white, black, and yellow buildings, felt refreshed. As for the children of the noble families from the Gem Kingdom, they were all looking at the scenery in front of them with excitement. Is this where the royal family's jadeite hot spring is located? It must be. The surrounding buildings are all green. It matches the rumored location of the jadeite hot spring. Seeing that most of the members of the noble families from the Jewel Kingdom were excited, the members of the noble families from the Scarlet Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom were puzzled. Jadeite hot spring? What kind of spring is this? Have you heard of it? No, never heard of it. I think I've heard of it, but the elders in my family mentioned it occasionally. I can't remember it clearly. Grey raised his eyebrows slightly. He hadn't heard of this spring either. Although he had read a lot of books, most of them were about the Purple Moon Kingdom. After all, it was difficult for books to be circulated between the two kingdoms in this world. Therefore, he had never heard of the jadeite hot spring. This is a hot spring with a mysterious power that the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom possesses. No one knows how this spring water is produced. However, this spring water has an extremely strong healing power. If one soaks in it, it will speed up the recovery of their injuries and increase their strength. Sophia explained with a smile. There was an unusual gentleness in her smile. Welcome, everyone. I'm one of the organizers of this Tri-Kingdom exchange. I'm Brady Randolph. A man appeared with several men in combat attire following him. His skin was slightly pale, and he had a few strands of beard on his chin. He had a gentle smile on his face. I'm sure some of you already know where this place is. However, most of the people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Scarlet Kingdom don't know. Let me explain. This is the Jadeite Valley. It's a secret place of the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom. There's a type of jadeite hot spring in the valley. Soaking in it will speed up the recovery of your injuries and increase your strength. Considering that there will definitely be injuries in the battle, the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom has decided to hold the Tri-Kingdom Exchange here to speed up the recovery of your injuries and increase your strength. Hearing Brady Randolph's words, some of them were enlightened while some of them were surprised. Even Gray couldn't help but look delighted. With the reverse nurturing ability, he naturally didn't care about the Jadeite Hot Springs ability to speed up the recovery of his injuries. On the contrary, the fact that it could increase his strength was very attractive to him. At this moment, an old man from the Scarlet Kingdom who came to protect the Scarlet Kingdom's disciples asked with a frown. The jadeite hot spring that can speed up the recovery of injuries and increase one's strength is indeed great. However, this place is hundreds of miles away from the Imperial City, and the most outstanding disciples from the three kingdoms are gathered here. What if the Flame Kingdom suddenly attacks us? 15_15674/ Chapter 422. Don't worry. The royal family of the Jewel Kingdom has already taken this into consideration. Brady Randolph smiled confidently and explained. The castle in Jadeite Valley is actually a relic from the Empire era. It has a rune protection mechanism from the Empire era. The rune protection mechanism has been activated. Even a few king-level masters would not be able to break into it in a short period of time. This period of time is enough for us to ask for help from the royal family of the Jewel Kingdom and wait for their king-level masters to arrive. Who knows how to activate and deactivate the rune protection mechanism? An elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom asked worriedly. Only a few of the people in charge and I know how to activate and deactivate it. The others would not be able to do it even if they wanted to. Brady Randolph continued to explain. His explanation made the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Crimson Kingdom feel slightly relieved. The Empire era was a mysterious period. This castle was a relic from the Empire era. It had a rune protection mechanism that even a king-level master would not be able to break into in a short period of time. It was highly credible. With a rune protection mechanism of this level, their safety was guaranteed. The next day, the younger generation of the three kingdoms gathered in front of a green stone platform that was more than 100 meters in length and width. The king-level masters of the three kingdoms gathered. The king-level master from the Purple Moon Kingdom was naturally the white-haired man from the royal family, Fitch Violet. The king-level master from the Crimson Kingdom was a skinny old man. His skin was full of wrinkles, showing signs of age. However, his eyes were so sharp that no one dared to look him in the eye. The king-level master from the Jewel Kingdom was a woman. She did not look old. She looked like a middle-aged woman. She was not like the white-haired man who had become a king-level master at a very young age. The faint crow's feet around her eyes indicated that she had become a king-level master at a very young age. However, women were very particular about their appearance. Even a king-level woman would be the same. As a master, she would naturally be able to find some precious magic herbs that could slow down the aging process of one's appearance. Behind the three of them were the most outstanding disciples of the younger generation from the three kingdoms. Some were full of vigor, and their eyes were full of fighting spirit. Some of them had calm expressions without any changes in their emotions, as if they were as calm as an ancient well. There were also some who had a faint smile on their faces, as if nothing had happened. Geniuses were full of personality, and the most outstanding disciples of the younger generation of the three kingdoms were even more so. Almost everyone had a different reaction to this exchange. The Three Kingdoms exchange will begin today and last for a month. Within this month, the younger generation of the three kingdoms can challenge each other. On the fighting ring, Brady Randolph, a man from the Jewel Kingdom with a few strands of beard on his chin, said a few words to the audience with a smile before retreating to one side of the fighting ring. The exchange between the younger generation of the three kingdoms naturally could not have any deaths or injuries. After all, they were the future pillars of the three kingdoms, and no accidents were allowed to happen. He would be the supervisor of the battle, so if there were any deaths or injuries, he would be able to intervene in time. Of course, it was only death and disability. He wouldn't stop ordinary injuries. If even injuries had to be avoided, there would be no pressure at all. Then, there would be no meaning in holding such an exchange. "I'll go first." From the Jewel Kingdom, a muscular young man strode out. His skin was slightly tanned, and he held a huge battle axe in one hand. He walked onto the fighting ring and looked towards the Purple Moon Kingdom. "I'll go first." From his gaze, it was obvious that he was going to challenge the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Immediately, a few of the younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom wanted to step out. In the end, the descendant of the new Marquis family, the Leo family, who was once saved by Grey, stepped onto the fighting ring first. He held a battle sword in his hand. He was tall and muscular, and his skin was slightly tanned. However, his skin was slightly bronze in color. Dang! The two of them quickly clashed. After an ear-piercing sound of collision, both of them couldn't help but retreat. As they retreated, a thick pillar of fire appeared in front of the descendant of the Leo family. It was like a huge pillar of a palace. On the other hand, the young man from the Jewel Kingdom unleashed an icy river. Boom! The pillar of flames and the river of ice formed by the cold air collided with each other, creating a violent explosion. On the fighting ring, broken flames and extreme cold spread all over the place. Many of them flew out of the fighting ring and attacked the crowd. However, just as they were about to leave the fighting ring, a green light flickered and blocked the flames and icy air. This fighting ring was also from the era of the Empire, and it was also engraved with the defensive formation of the Empire. After hundreds of exchanges, the descendant of the Leon family seized the opportunity and slashed down with his battle sword, injuring the burly man from the Jewel Kingdom and winning. However, although he had injured his opponent, he couldn't help but gasp for breath. His opponent's strength was similar to his, and he had used up a lot of energy to win. "I'll fight you!" Facing him, who had used up a lot of energy, a descendant of a noble from the Jewel Kingdom stepped forward and defeated him without much effort. The one who attacked the descendant of a noble from the Jewel Kingdom was not a descendant of the Purple Moon Kingdom, but a descendant of a noble from the Crimson Kingdom. After all, this was an exchange between the three kingdoms, and not between the Jewel Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. The descendant of a noble from the Crimson Kingdom naturally didn't want to be left behind. In the end, the descendant of a noble from the Crimson Kingdom defeated the descendant of a noble from the Jewel Kingdom. More than 4 hours passed, and the representatives of the three kingdoms all went up to fight. Zero and Jasha also went up to fight, and they both defeated their respective opponent. Those who were sent to participate in the exchange were not weak, and the weakest among them was a berserker. However, after half a year of baptism on the battlefield, they had improved tremendously. They won overwhelming victories against opponents of the same level. In fact, it wasn't just the two of them. The other descendants of nobles from the Purple Moon Kingdom also won more than they lost. Obviously, this was due to the baptism of the battlefield. Grey didn't make a move. After all, with his current level of strength, if he were to participate in a battle between berserkers, it would be too much of a bully. However, he estimated that it would be his turn soon, because he had already noticed that several people from the Crimson Kingdom were looking at him. Sure enough, not long after, a descendant of a noble from the Crimson Kingdom went on stage and defeated his opponent. He then looked at the Purple Moon Kingdom, or more accurately, at Grey. "Grey Fergus, do you dare to fight me?" This was a young man with extremely fair skin. He looked at Grey with a cold gaze. He was the one who had attacked Grey in the stone gambling den because Grey had rejected Lars Crimson's invitation to stone gambling. Since he dared to take the initiative to challenge Grey, he was not weak. Judging from the previous battle, he should be a berserker. This was the first time a berserker had appeared on stage since the start of the battle. Grey had nothing to say. He walked out from the Purple Moon Kingdom's team and walked towards the stairs of the stage. Since the other party had already challenged him, he naturally had no reason to refuse. Moreover, he came to participate in the Three Kingdoms exchange to see the top powerhouses of the younger generation from the other two kingdoms. He wanted them to become pressure for him so that he could break through the bottleneck of the first stage of the Berserker level as soon as possible and break through to the second stage. Although the other party would definitely not be able to give him that kind of pressure, he could still treat it as a warm-up before the battle with a strong opponent. Clang! The fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom pulled out the sword at his waist. It was a long and thin sword with a sharp edge that shone with a cold gleam. Buzz! A layer of hazy green light was attached to his long sword. The green light spread across the blade and finally, a huge sword that was 3 meters long and half a meter wide appeared in his hand. Every inch of the green light on the huge sword was condensed from a large amount of wind elemental energy. This wind elemental energy was the ability of his own wind elemental blood beast. After reaching the realm of barbarian blood warriors, they would be able to freely control their blood fiends. Other than a few people who had special blood fiends, most of them were able to attach their blood fiend's abilities to their weapons, allowing their physical body to fuse with their blood fiend's abilities. This was usually their strongest fighting method. The fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom was one of them. Whoosh! The fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom pounced towards Grey with a cold look. His dissatisfaction with Grey had been accumulated long ago in the stone gambling den. If he had not been stopped at that time, he would have attacked Grey. He wanted to defeat Grey with lightning speed. He wanted Grey to suffer a crushing defeat, so he used his full strength from the start. Looking at the fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom pouncing towards him, Grey's expression was calm. He could guess what his opponent was planning. He did not care. In fact, his thoughts were similar to his opponent's. He did not want this battle to drag on for too long. He could not remember how many Berserker blood warriors had died at his hands on the battlefield. Obviously, the Berserker blood warriors could not bring him any pressure, so it was better to end it as soon as possible. Warner Nahum unsheathed the demonic sword at his waist, causing Warner Nahum to grit his teeth. Every time he saw Grey use this demonic sword, he would feel a sense of humiliation in his heart. He could not wait to rush over and fight Grey to the death. Grey naturally wouldn't care about Warner Nahum's attitude below the battle platform. His longsword, which was like a rock, was also surrounded by green light, turning into a huge green sword. He took a step forward and suddenly chopped down with his sword. Boom! The sword surrounded by green light collided with the sword. What? The next moment, the fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom, who was holding the sword, suddenly changed his expression and retreated. If it were not for the formation's reinforcement, the stone slab under his feet would definitely have been cracked by him. His arms were in pain as if the web between his thumb and forefinger was cracked. For a moment, his two hands actually felt weak. Humph! He did not use his mixed ability, only the wind ability at the Berserker level. However, Grey's power was derived from the Amethyst Beast. Like the ability of the Blood Fiends, it had also reached the special level of the Berserker level. Naturally, it was not something that the fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom could resist. The fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom's web between his thumb and forefinger was chapped. His hands were numb and in severe pain. Grey naturally would not let go of such an opportunity. Whoosh! He took a step forward and caught up with the fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom who was retreating. Under the man's horrified gaze, the giant sword swept out. The fair-skinned man endured the severe pain between his thumb and forefinger and blocked with his sword, but it was too late. The giant's sword surrounded by green light was like a green halo that swept across. Poof! A flower of blood bloomed. The fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom's clothes were torn, and a bloody wound appeared on his abdomen. He was sent flying backward and landed heavily on the ground. Drops of blood sprinkled on the battle platform. It was a dazzling red. Chapter 423. He defeated a barbarian blood warrior with just 2 strikes? The younger generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom was not surprised that Grey defeated a barbarian blood warrior with just 2 strikes. After all, with Grey's true strength, he could kill a barbarian blood warrior with just 1 strike if he went all out. Many of the younger generation of the Crimson Kingdom and the Jewel Kingdom, however, raised their eyebrows slightly. Those who had reached the barbarian level could definitely be considered strong among the younger generation. After all, they were not even 30 years old. To be able to have such strength at this age was already extremely heaven-defying. The other party had defeated the fair-skinned man with the strength of a barbarian blood warrior with just 2 strikes. It was obvious that the other party's strength was far beyond the fair-skinned man's. He only used 2 strikes? Even the strongest among the younger generation of the 2 kingdoms could not help but be slightly moved. Although they thought that they could defeat the fair-skinned man, they definitely did not dare to say that they could defeat him with just 2 strikes. To them, Grey was definitely a strong opponent. Only the Jewel Queen Glinway Austen, the Crimson Prince Lars Scarlet, and 2 others remained calm. They could also do such a thing, and it would be even easier. Bang! The long sword touched the ground. Grey looked in the direction of the Crimson Kingdom. He did not challenge them verbally, but his intention was obvious. Since he had already made his move, it was naturally impossible for him to stop before he could even move his body. Many of the younger generation of the Crimson Kingdom were hostile to him, so he naturally would not be polite. Humph! The fair-skinned man took the initiative to challenge Grey, but he was defeated by Grey with just 2 strikes. This made them, who were also nobles of the Crimson Kingdom, feel ashamed. And the way Grey looked at them from the battle platform made them even more furious. One of the nobles who had coldly glanced at Grey walked out first. Arrogant! This noble was dressed in a black and red battle suit. His body was slender and strong, and his muscles were full of the beauty of a cheetah. His gaze was cold as he walked up the stairs to the battle platform step by step. He was the most outstanding direct descendant of Duke Bruce's family in the Crimson Kingdom, Wei Bruce. Duke Bruce's family was a family that had once produced a king-level powerhouse. They had a very deep foundation, and their status in the Crimson Kingdom was not inferior to the Nahum family. In fact, they were even superior. This was because during the most glorious period of the family, 2 king-level powerhouses had once existed side by side. Don't think you're so great just because you defeated Geoffrey. His strength is only average among us. The nobleman dressed in black and red battle armor pulled out a 2-meter-long black spear from his back. He pointed the tip of the spear at Grey from afar and scolded coldly. I've never thought that defeating a mere barbarian blood warrior was something amazing. Grey's expression was calm as he looked at the nobleman in black and red who was pointing a gun at him. As for what level he is among the younger generation of the Crimson Kingdom, I'm not interested. At this time, the fair-skinned man from the Crimson Kingdom who had been injured by Grey was being helped back to the Crimson Kingdom's team. When he suddenly heard Grey describing him as a mere barbarian blood warrior, he was so angry that his face turned red and he almost vomited blood. As the most outstanding member of the younger generation of the family, he had always seen the respectful gazes of the younger generation of the family. Wherever he went, he would be the undisputed focus of attention. But now, he had completely become the background, and was actually described as a mere barbarian blood warrior. His heart was full of anger, but he had nowhere to vent it, because he was indeed no match for his opponent. In the exchange just now, he could clearly feel that his opponent was much stronger than him. "Looks like you're very arrogant." The eyes of the nobleman in black and red armor became even colder. The spear in his hand trembled slightly because of his anger, as if it would attack at any time like a raging dragon. As a member of the high and mighty Duke family, his peers would always speak to him humbly, afraid that they would make him unhappy. Who would dare to talk back to him like this? "I hope you can still be so arrogant later." The nobleman in black and red armor finally attacked in anger. All of a sudden, with him as the center, a large amount of black matter spread out like a demonic cloud, covering a small part of the fighting ring in an instant. It was like a rolling dark cloud in the sky and covering the earth as it attacked Gray. The black demonic cloud was not a dark cloud, but a pure shadow. The bloodline of the blood beast implanted in his opponent could control shadows, and he could turn invisible shadows into tangible matter. Judging from the momentum of this attack, his opponent was indeed stronger than the fair-skinned man, and had reached the second level of the barbarian realm. Due to the special nature of the shadow ability, he was unable to combine it with his physical strength. However, it was still extremely powerful. After all, this was a battle between the younger generation. The shadow transformed into a black demonic cloud that blotted out the sky as it attacked Gray. The young noble, dressed in black and red battle armor, wielded a long spear in his hand. His body merged with the spear, and his entire being seemed to have become one with the spear as he thrust it towards Gray. "If you think this is arrogance, then I'll accept it." Facing the huge shadow that was pressing down on him like a black demonic cloud, Gray's expression was still calm. In the battle with the Flame Kingdom, he had encountered a shadow ability attack that was even more powerful than this. It had been cast by a second-level barbarian realm warrior from the Flame Kingdom, who was extremely powerful even among the desolate blood warriors. With a single strike, hundreds of people were killed. It was as if a natural disaster had descended upon the world. It was extremely terrifying. At that time, he was also included in that attack. However, in the end, he relied on his powerful defense to forcefully charge out a path of survival. Having encountered such a shadow ability attack, he immediately felt that the young man in black and red armor's shadow ability attack was not very powerful, and so was the power of the attack. Whoosh! Gray's body did not move, but in front of him, a huge green river of rolling fog appeared. In the green river, cold air filled the air. The wind blades were like demonic weapons that went against the flow and collided with the black demonic cloud. Boom! The green river and the black demonic cloud collided, and then both exploded. Like a raging wave, wind blades, cold air, and the substance formed by the shadow sputtered in all directions. The protective layer around the battle stage rang out continuously. Clang! Under the aftermath, Gray and the nobleman in black and red armor avoided the aftermath and exchanged blows. The two separated as soon as they collided, and both of them could not help but retreat slightly. The nobleman in black and red armor had reached the second level of the barbarian realm. Although Gray had not reached the second level of the barbarian realm, he had inherited the terrifying strength of the purple blood beast, so his strength was not weaker than the nobleman's. Mixed ability? Is it a bloodline mutation or some kind of mixed blood technique? Outside the battle stage, the few people who understood what the Green River represented were shocked. Someone actually seemed to have mastered the mixed blood technique, which no one had mastered during the Empire's era. Even the Gem Queen, Glinway Austin, and the Scarlet Prince, Lars Scarlet, could not help but reveal a trace of surprise in their eyes. This level of combat power was still not a threat to them, but the mixed ability displayed by the nobleman surprised them. Mixed ability, according to the ancient books of the Empire, was an extremely powerful ability that could allow one to fight beyond their level. The nobleman actually mastered it. The older generation of the Purple Moon Kingdom who came with them explained, and they were relieved. It was a mutation caused by consuming the blood of a high-level blood beast. As one's level increased, this mixed ability would disappear. On the battle stage, the battle was still ongoing. Boom, boom, boom. The green river and the black cloud appeared from time to time and collided with each other, causing the entire battle stage to look like it was being baptized by a storm. In this storm, Gray and the nobleman in black and red armor dodged while exchanging blows. Sparks flew as their weapons collided. They exchanged blows in the gaps between the blood beast's ability. The nobleman in black and red armor swung his spear left and right. Every spear was aimed at Gray's vital points, while Gray brandished his longsword tightly. There was only one sword in his hand, but it was as if there were dozens of swords in his hand. They turned into a shield, blocking the spears that were aimed at his vital points time and time again. While blocking the spear attacks, Gray's eyes were sharp and his body was full of murderous intent. It was as if he had returned to the battlefield with the Flame Kingdom. The murderous intent on his body was so strong that it was like a cloak wrapped around his body. After continuously blocking the spears of the nobleman in black and red armor, Gray's long sword suddenly slashed diagonally at the side of the spear, knocking it aside. His sword followed the shaft of the spear and cut toward the nobleman in black and red armor. Ah! With a scream, a deep wound appeared on the chest of the nobleman in black and red armor, and he flew backward. Blood splattered in the air. The way he was defeated and his sorry appearance was almost exactly the same as the fair-skinned nobleman from before. Even Wei Wei An was defeated. Seeing that the nobleman in black and red armor was defeated in the same way, the faces of the younger generation of the Scarlet Kingdom became even uglier. Even the faces of the older generation of the Scarlet Kingdom, who were responsible for protecting them, were faintly unpleasant. Two people had been defeated in a row, and in the same way. They could already vaguely feel the strange gazes from the Jewel Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although the three kingdoms had formed an alliance, competition and both open and covert struggles were inevitable. The simplest problem was which kingdom would take the leading position in the alliance. This was a point that had to be fought over. No kingdom was willing to be commanded. No matter how one thought about it, it was extremely worrying. The successive defeats caused the skinny king-level expert from the Scarlet Kingdom to frown slightly. He looked behind him and finally fixed his gaze on a young man in blue battle armor. "Otis, you go. Go all out.